Hello everyone, SirMonkeySuit back again with a brand new video. As you can tell by the title, this is my Game of Thrones overview video, so this is sort of like the precursor video to my eventual like Season 8 reactions when the show starts, which is only a few days away. So, exciting times. So yeah, if you didn't catch my video last week, the update video I had, I basically said that I am going to be reacting to Season 8 of Game of Thrones, but seeing as I only started reacting to things last year, I never got to react to the previous seasons of Game of Thrones. And if anybody is like me, I'm not all that keen on jumping into watching a reactor like when they jump in midway through a series. So obviously, since I haven't reacted to the previous seasons, you know, I figured I would make this video so that you can get my sort of thoughts and opinions and views on everything Game of Thrones so far in the previous seasons. So there's going to be quite a bit to get through. We're going to start off with each season overview, so I'm going to go through 1 through 7, all of the seasons, and point out like some important details in those seasons or like things that I liked, and then sort of give you my views on those things. And then after that, we'll go into things like my top 10 favourite characters, ranking the seasons from worst to best, and then we're going to finish with some theories and predictions that I think is going to happen in the upcoming season of Game of Thrones. So as I am not too sure how long this video is going to be, I'm going to list all of the things that I'm going to get through right here. There will be time codes and things in the description so that you can fast forward to certain things. If you don't want to hear me blabble on about the seasons and my overviews and what I thought about those seasons and things like that, then you can just, you know, go straight to my top 10 favorite characters or the theories and things like that. You know, because I'm not going to be making like different videos for these different things. It's just going to be all contained in this one video. It's all here in one place, so you know, you don't have to, you know, find other shit. Okay, so we're going to start off with the overviews of all of the different seasons. We are going to begin with Season 1, obviously, as you would do, as it's the very beginning. And we're going to get into that immediately. So, Season 1, it's obviously the foundation season. All the setup is in this season. And actually, on my second time viewing this season, I preferred it. I know why. I know why, though. There is a lot of little details to pick up, like almost like what you would consider little Easter eggs that relate to future revelations and stuff in the later seasons and things like that. So they're nice little details that you don't pick up on a first time viewing, because obviously you don't know what's coming up. Especially if you haven't read the books, which, you know, I haven't. I mean, I've listened to an audiobook of the first book, but that's it. So one of the things that I really love about Season 1 is the idea that the inhabitants of this world, like when they hear things of White Walkers and giants and things like that, that it's entirely like story based. It's almost like fiction to these guys, or like legends and myths and things that we would consider in our real world, like, you know, like unicorns and stuff like that, you know. I really like the fact that they don't believe that it exists. I mean, things like dragons and stuff, it's all in their recent memory. They have actual remains of dragons, and so they know that those things existed, but things like White Walkers and stuff to them aren't real. I've got to say as well, a lot of Season 1, there's a lot more of these moments of like the good times almost, you know what I mean? Like it's got this feeling of like, oh, you're not expecting anything to really go as bad as you would think, but now knowing that, you know what I mean, it's a bit melancholy, a bit bittersweet to see these characters again, knowing how they end. I think one of the best things about Season 1 is obviously Ned Stark, but not just Ned Stark, Robert Baratheon as well. I think Mark Addy and Sean Bean, like those two, the chemistry between those two is my favourite thing about this season. I absolutely adore those guys. I absolutely miss them. Like now, like coming back and watching it again, I love their dynamic like between those two. They've got that like old sort of grizzled like veteran war buddy kind of feel, but the best thing about them is that they're not all buddy all of the time. So I actually really like their dynamic, and it's something I really do miss. So yeah, like in this season, obviously we get introduced to like everybody, and it's great because it's all in episode 1 as well. I've noticed that pretty much the mainstay cast was all introduced in episode 1. They took little time as possible, like introducing you to all these characters. You know, we met pretty much all the Starks, Robert Baratheon, we met pretty much all the Lannisters aside from Tywin really that matter, and then later on in the episode Daenerys Targaryen as well. Speaking of the Lannisters as well, mainly Jaime, you know, it's so easy to dislike that guy, like, and judge him immediately from episode 1. Like, you just look at the guy, point at him and say, this guy is such a prick. There's no way in a few seasons I'm going to end up liking him, and yet you do. One of the things that really got me in season 1, I believe it was episode 2, when Jon Snow has decided, obviously, to go to the Wall to become a member of the Night's Watch, and Ned Stark is heading down to King's Landing to become Hand of the King, that as soon as it gets to the crossroads, they have that last talk, and obviously the first time viewing, you never know that that's the last time they're ever going to talk to each other, but in watching it on a second time run through is very emotional, very sad. One of the things that I really liked about that meeting, though, the talk that they had was, you may not have my name, but you have my blood. And I love how he was not lying there. You know, he has Ned Stark's blood, or he has the Stark blood running through him. Not by Ned, though, but obviously by Lyanna, who we find out later. One of the things I actually noticed about in season 1 as well is that almost like, and I don't know if I was just assuming this the first time I actually watched the show, but the focus on direwolves, like, you know, knowing how they end up is very sad. I mean, I'm a doggo person. I love fucking dogs to bits. You know, so the idea of like wolves and things, I was like, yeah, I love this. I like where this is going. And knowing like almost how little they do show up. I mean, you get Ghost a lot, I guess. And when they do show up, it's beautiful. But yeah, it's kind of sad, like, knowing that they didn't, maybe a lot of them didn't get as much like screen time as I hoped they did. But they were brilliant regardless. One of the things that I noticed on the second time viewing of season 1 actually is how much it is beaten into you that Ned is honourable. Yeah, like obviously we know this kind of almost from the get-go that he obviously is an honourable man, but they choose to not tell you outright, but by extension of talks with other people. So, like, for example, with Ned to Jaime, when he was talking about, you know, you served your king well when serving was safe. He's obviously talking about the fact that Jaime was a kingslayer to the Mad King. As a kingsguard, you know, you're supposed to uphold that oath, regardless of how morally wrong the king may be. Kingsguard are sworn to protect them, and that kind of, you know, extends to Barristan Selmy, who I actually really like as a character, who actually did serve the Mad King and didn't break his oath, and because of that, he still is a Kingsguard, because they like the fact that he is honourable enough to take his oath seriously. But I think, you know, the main thing that I'm getting at is the fact that because it is beaten into you so much, it is setting you up to be upset when it eventually comes to Ned Stark's death, because you know, it's basically making you learn the hard way that this is what you should be expecting in this world. You know what I mean? It's not all happy-go-lucky all of the time. In fact, it's more often than not, it's actually a bad time. But I think it's an interesting way that they've written the show like that, you know, by giving you some sort of like setting you up for defeat so that you are aware that this could happen to anybody at any time. I think one of the things that season 1 actually did great that the other seasons didn't do, and I know the reason for this, it's because, you know, this works in the season 1 context because you're still getting used to things and how things work, and what means what, but season 1 felt masterful with the sort of intrigue, the sort of mystery kind of behind it, and I really like that in season 1. Of course, getting used to these characters and stuff like that throughout season 1. Viserys is another one that I haven't talked about yet, but, you know, obviously he's brother to Daenerys. He ends up dying in episode 7, I believe, with a golden crown. That ends up being a double entendre title, which I found Game of Thrones actually likes to do that with a lot of their titles. I'll actually tell you a few of them later on, but yeah, this almost foreshadows the sort of the death of a dragon in season 7, with it being Viserion. It's very sort of poetic that the dragon that was named after Viserys would be the one that ends up, you know, turning. I've got to say as well, on the second time viewing of season 1, something that I didn't really feel for watching the first time round was Robert Baratheon. Now, obviously, since watching a lot of the show and things like that, I've watched a lot of videos on sort of like the backstory of a lot of things, obviously with Robert's rebellion and stuff like that, and how like, you know, amazing Robert Baratheon actually was before he became king and fat and all of that kind of stuff. But now, obviously, knowing all of that stuff and going through season 1 again, I find it really almost like pitiful, Robert Baratheon, the way that he struggles with life after being a warrior, and now that, you know, for him being king, he doesn't find it as all it's cracked up to be. You know what I mean? He wants to be out in the field and you know, and killing. But the loss of Lyanna is a big struggle for him. One of my favourite scenes of Season 1 is actually Tywin Lannister's introduction. It's just so powerful. The presence of that guy is unbelievable. Charles Dance is incredible. I just love the introduction of the fact that he's butchering a stag. And then later I found out, well, obviously I knew this going into the second viewing, but, you know, after watching it the first time, like, later on I would find out that he actually did skin, like, butcher and skin an actual stag whilst performing out those lines and stuff like that. And for an introduction to a character, there's nothing that really says, like, this man is powerful, and he's going to be stirring some shit up coming in these next few seasons, and by fucking God does he. He ends up being one of my favourite characters on the show, Tywin Lannister, just because of the performance alone. Like, it's really something to behold. So of course, with Ned Stark in the capital as Hand of the King, he's solving this mystery and stuff, and he comes across this idea that, you know, like, well, not the idea, it is actually the truth, that Joffrey is not the son of Robert Baratheon, nor Tommen nor Myrcella either, but they are actually the children of Jaime and Cersei. So we obviously get into this, you know, the incestual kind of thing that's going on. And because of that, there's a whole thing with Ned and Jaime and stuff, and then eventually Littlefinger, who betrays Ned, and then begins essentially the War of the Five Kings because of this. You know, Ned is thrown into the Black Cells. Robb Stark, the eldest son, he has word of it, and I love the fact that Robb Stark immediately, without any hesitation, steps up and becomes like just becomes a man immediately. I love the fact that there's no hesitation there, and he ends up being king in the north because of it. He's also a great military mind, a great tactician as well, because he ends up winning the first battle, giving up 2,000 men in order to catch Jaime Lannister off guard, which is great. I mean, the kid's supposed to be, I don't know how old he is supposed to be in the show, like 18, 19 maybe, but I know in the books he's like 16 or something, you know what I mean? And for a kid like of that age to like step up so quickly is great. And then we get to the infamous episode 9, Baelor. Of course, we know what happens in this one, and if I can take you back to my thoughts first watching this, because obviously I don't have any footage of it, but yeah, I remember my heart being in my throat, because it's one of those things where it's not expected. Like, you cannot kill off your main guy. Like, that is just something you can't do, and Game of Thrones did it. And like I said before, it's setting you up to you know, to be aware that this kind of stuff can happen in this show, and it is such a heart-dropping feeling. It's you know, it's very, very somber to witness that, especially with, you know, Sansa up there. She was like, you know, pleading whatnot, pleading that he would, you know, you would be able to get off without being executed. Of course, with Joffrey being in charge, he would fucking execute him anyway, because you're a little fucking shit. I think one of the big things, you know, the reason why it's so bad, because yeah, it's horrible watching Ned go, but I think the thing that makes it worse is the fact that he gave up his honor just to die anyway. You know, the character of Ned is that's his thing. He is honorable to a T. You know what I mean? He doesn't dishonor himself or others. He is honorable through and through, and in the end, he gave up his honor, saying that yes, like he admitted of, you know, being guilty of treason, you know, so that he could possibly get away, and that his daughters would be safe. And then Joffrey just decides to lop off his head anyway. Even more so, the fact that they used ice to execute Ned is a big fucking insult. Like, it's horrible. And then obviously the big thing with Ned Stark that I really, really like the line of, like, Ned Stark saying the person who, like, passes the sentence should swing the sword, and that was another thing that didn't happen in Ned's execution. Joffrey ordered it, and he was executed by ill and pain. So, you know, just everything was an insult to Ned's memory in that final moment, and it just makes it all for a heartbreaking scene. One of the things I actually thought of as well is that I never hear of Khal Drogo anymore, and it's almost a shame because I do feel like Ned's death, because he was top billing, he was our main character that we got through, like all of our information through was through Ned, that Khal Drogo's death is actually overshadowed by Ned's. You know, something that I guess it's probably maybe because of the way the show is actually written nowadays that everything almost comes back to Ned, but nothing comes back to Drogo because it doesn't really have to. As much as I really actually liked Khal Drogo because he does have that sort of like that powerful presence. You don't fuck with Khal Drogo, you know. But yeah, I thought it was like an interesting little thing that, you know, Khal Drogo is he's sort of like he's not thought of as much anymore. But of course we get to the end of season 1 and Dany's dragons have hatched. She was given obviously fossilized dragon eggs, and obviously with the witch that she was trying to get Khal Drogo to be alive again and to be happy and whatnot. She put Drogo's body obviously on a pyre for a funeral. She got the witch and then strapped herself to the pyre, let it go up in flames. Fire can't kill a dragon, so Daenerys Targaryen is pretty much reborn again. There's a lot of different theories, you know, about, well, only death can pay for life, right? I think that's something that is actually true, what the witch said. And, you know, there's theories that because there was 3 dragon eggs, there was one for Khal Drogo, one for the witch, and then one for Daenerys Targaryen, who didn't actually die, but there's a thing that's like, oh, she's reborn again in the flames, and things like that. And obviously there's a thing that they mention in this, that King's blood, so essentially King's DNA is actually more, it contains more magical power in a way. So yeah, that's an interesting little tidbit. So yeah, that was season 1. Again, I absolutely adored that season. It's the season that is set up in a way to be almost like a murder mystery, and like a lot of intrigue regarding the like Robert Baratheon's sons and things like that. So I really enjoy season 1. But like I said, a lot of it comes down to Ned and Robert, and I love those 2 characters, and that is a dynamic that I really miss. Okay, so we'll move on to season 2, and this is where things like really start picking up. And obviously the reason is because the first season is kind of like all that set up. Season 2 is where it all kicks off. So the War of the Five Kings pretty much started at this point. You've got Robb, Stannis Baratheon, yeah, that's someone who we meet in season 2. Renly Baratheon, Joffrey, and Balon Greyjoy later on in season 2 as well. So we've got the War of the Five Kings starting. The season 2 starts off with the red meteor thing, and there's a lot of theories regarding that. I think it's like tied to prophecy and things like that. The return of the dragons means that they're apparently like magic is more prominent from now on because of that red meteor apparently. So Tyrion and whatnot becoming Hand of the King. This is where I think Tyrion is at his best. So season 2 to 4, I think Tyrion, like that's Tyrion's best group of seasons. I really love Tyrion in these seasons. This is where he became my favourite character. So yeah, we get introduced to like Stannis Baratheon alongside Davos Seaworth and Melisandre. So these are characters that are going to be sticking around for a bit. And I actually love Stannis Baratheon's sort of the way that he thinks about things. Like he's very much duty first. He will in battle and stuff. He will lead his army up front. He'll be the first on the beach, and you know, the first to attack. So I really do admire Stannis throughout this whole show. I also love his little quirk of being a sort of like a grammar Nazi. You know what I mean? I love all that stuff. This is also where we start to get introduced to like the Lord of Light, which I would say is the most prominent religion in this show, alongside the sort of the old gods. Other than that, I don't think any other religion really matters all that much, and that's just primarily in the show. You know, I don't know about the books and things like that, about what stuff happens with other religions, but I feel like the Red God, Lord of Light, R'hllor, I believe his name is, and the old gods, the weirwood trees and stuff like that. Those 2 are the ones that actually have like a lot of magic, like shit going on, some real crazy shit. So along with Melisandre and obviously the introduction of the Lord of Light and stuff like that, that we actually get our first look at the prophecy of Azor Ahai. So Azor Ahai is the prince that was promised, the warrior that will essentially wield a flaming sword and save the world. So this is where everyone's theories start coming out about who's it going to be and stuff like that. I will talk about that later on in the theories section. We also get the betrayal from Theon Greyjoy with the Starks. He obviously goes back home to the Iron Islands, and Balon's like, right, this is it. Everyone's at war. That's what I'm going to do. And Theon Greyjoy's betrayal itself, I remember like being like so disappointed, because in these seasons, even though what happened after season 1 with Ned Stark dying and stuff like that, you're still hopeful that things are going to end up being nice and dandy for the Starks, and you're just behind Robb all of the way. So the betrayal with Theon Greyjoy is it's just a kick in the nuts. We'll get a great scene at Harrenhal as well, where Tywin Lannister comes to Harrenhal and Arya ends up being Tywin's cupbearer. That was a really great. I love their dynamic as well. You know, with Arya being like too smart for her own good. This is also the place where we get introduced to Jaqen H'ghar, who's a really fucking great character. Like, you know, he was never as good in the later seasons, I thought, but in season 2, like that whole, like, just the mystery of what a faceless man is and stuff. Obviously, we didn't know that at the time, but honestly, like, such intrigue, such a great character in season 2, because you're just thinking about how the fuck has he pulled off these kills. Theon comes with the Ironborn, takes over Winterfell, and beheads Roderick. What is he? He's the quartermaster, or is he the master at arms? He's one of the two. But that scene's fucking like, that's a tough scene to get through as well, because, you know, Roderick actually like taught Theon like what he knows and everything like that, and just Theon like he fell so far. He really did. I think this is something that actually gets to Theon later on as well, like when he eventually becomes Reek, you know, and he becomes like a bit nuts because of the torture. I think it doesn't help with the beheading of Roderick and the betraying of the Starks and, you know, burning the children and stuff. You know, I think like all of that kind of doesn't exactly help him in the brain department. And then we get our first major set piece for the show with Blackwater. It took place all in one, like in Blackwater, all in one episode, and it was a fucking fantastic. Like this was a huge deal for TV. Like this is the kind of thing that you look at and you're saying to yourself, "Holy shit, this is TV! Like this is a TV show." You know what I mean? And it's not like you're looking at it and thinking that this is a movie. And it all just basically is telling you like this is the shit that you can look forward to in seasons to come. And obviously this is the start of like where Bronn becomes like the MVP and the guy that you need to go to in these big battles, because he's always the most valuable player on these fields of battle. He really is. Like he's the one that caused the fucking wildfire to explode and actually, you know, blow up. I don't even know how many ships on Stannis Baratheon's side, but it was a fucking good ton. Obviously, you know, lighting the wildfire, the green fire explosion, that was a great scene. But Bronn is just such an unbelievable character, like, because, you know, we meet him in season 1. He ends up fighting for Tyrion in his first trial by combat. Later on in the later seasons, he'll be fighting in the field of fire and whatnot, and he'll be an MVP there as well. So Bronn is like almost like an underdog, like this character that never really, I don't think, gets the plaudits from the people around him that he deserves. One of the greatest parts about this episode is obviously Tyrion leading the men. Like the fact that, you know, somebody who is, you know, a dwarf and people have ostracized him for this. You know, with Joffrey obviously being a fucking coward little shit, he fucks off, and it's left to Tyrion to lead the men because nobody else will. And I just love the fact that he steps up and chooses to do this while no one else would.
Let's go kill them!
And we get our first look at the Army of the Dead as well. I believe this is where Sam is. He's the one that gets the eye on the Army of the Dead, right? He's like sitting at a rock, and we get a look at a White Walker very close up, and then obviously the Army of the Dead follows. So yeah, like all the way back, this is setting up. I can't believe that the last episode, or the last scene that we actually saw of Game of Thrones, and they've just made it through the wall. When you're thinking about all the way back in season 2, we've seen the Army of the Dead. It's just all of that setup, man. It's like It's like we're just ready for this war to fucking kick off, you know? The Maester Luwin death. I want to bring up this because I find that Maester Luwin is the only Maester, aside from maybe Aemon Targaryen, that actually has a true allegiance to the lords that they are with, you know? I feel like, because I think Maesters are supposed to only be like loyal to the castle, so I get that some of them, you know, aren't great, you know, if that like helping out the Boltons, for example, yeah, but I felt like Maester Luwin almost was one of the Starks, you know, and it was sad to see him go. That was a sad death. Robb Stark marries Talisa. That is a fucking big mistake, isn't it? And it's so shocking knowing what comes up later, because the fact that Robb, through all of this time, like, you know, through Season 1, Season 2, and Season 3, he does everything right. It's just this one mistake that he fucks up on, and that's what ends his life. And I think, just like with Season 1, how it was, you know, it was all playing up to Ned's death so that it can sort of ready you for this kind of thing happening in the future. Just like this, I think it basically makes a statement that just one mistake and you're fucked in this world. And then obviously Jaqen H'ghar leaves for Braavos, giving Arya a coin and saying, you know, you go up to someone in Braavos, give them a coin, say Valar Morghulis, and they will, you know, they will take you to the House of Black and White. It does leave us thinking, like, why was Jaqen H'ghar in Westeros in the first place? Because I feel like in the later seasons, he kind of, almost see him, because I didn't see anybody else really in the House of Black and White other than the Waif, right? Or like, you know, those were the only two, you know, important characters that were there at the time. It just makes you wonder what Jaqen H'ghar was doing in Westeros in the first place. I know there's like, you know, there's theories and shit that he might be Syrio Forel and stuff like that, but, you know, I'm not going to go into them now anyway. But yeah, that was Season 2. So yeah, a fucking phenomenal season. You know, this is where it kind of just, you know, we've kind of gone past, you know, the setup season. This is where it's all starting. And Season 3, to me, like, Season 2 and 3 go so much hand in hand. It's like, it's, you know, that almost just like, you know, that almost like interchangeable, because they're, you know, it's just straight up one after the other. I think they're so like similar in feel, and that is not a bad thing, because I really love Season 2. Okay, Season 3, and we get introduced to Mance Rayder and Tormund's Giantsbane. Mance Rayder obviously being the king beyond the wall. We've heard talks of him in, you know, through Season 2 and whatnot, and now we finally get to meet him. Jon has made his way into the wildling camp, got himself amongst those guys, and gotten friendly with them as well. We also get introduced to Missandei, Grey Worm, and the Unsullied. Obviously, Daenerys getting, you know, starting to get her army built up alongside her dragons. And Barristan Selmy joins Daenerys. Obviously, he left because he didn't want to be under that fucking little cunt Joffrey. Yeah, I like that. I like that little decision for Barristan to go and join up with the Targaryens. Because remember, he was pledged to the Mad King before. This is also the season where Theon's torture begins at the hands of Ramsay Bolton. Of course, at this point, we don't know who Ramsay actually is. But yeah, this is where his torture starts, and it's I didn't actually realize how long it goes on for. I, like, you know, going back through it again, I'm like, it gets to a point where I'm like, fuck, is he still getting tortured? Like, it's no wonder that he turns into Reek. Like, he's suffered so much. I'm fully, like, on board with Theon getting tortured up until a point, but I'll tell you when I feel like he's had enough. Jaime loses his sword hand. Now, this was like, there's been moments, you know, in Season 1 and in Season 2 where my heart kind of dropped and I was like short of breath. So in Season 1, because of how quick something is, right? Because of something happening like immediately that you weren't expecting. In Season 1, it was when Ned and Jaime are fighting, and Ned's right-hand man gets stabbed with a dagger from Jaime Lannister. That one made my fucking heart like drop. I was like, what? Because it was so quick and unexpected. Season 2 was Battle of the Blackwater, when Tyrion got slashed across the face. That one almost also left me breathless. And then in season 3, it was this one, like his hand being chopped off so fucking quick. It's just something you don't expect, you know. But this is the start of Jamie's redemption, right? This is where, you know, he becomes pitiful, and, you know, he's humbled by this whole thing, and then you start to understand him because he starts talking about, you know, the reasons why he stabbed the Mad King in the back and things like that. So this is a very, very, very big moment in season 3. So Varys in season 3, this is actually Varys's like best season for me. He has so many great moments because Varys, to me, like, he is all about like giving information to, like, you know, obviously with who he's talking to, but obviously like the viewer. I feel like he gives like nice exposition on certain things. Obviously this was the season where he did the whole thing with the sorcerer, that whole thing about like us learning about him growing up on the streets and then, you know, being sold off to a sorcerer and having his cock and bollocks chopped off and burnt in the flames. It's also where he talks to Olenna Tyrell about Littlefinger being the most dangerous man in Westeros, and how he would see the world burn if he could be king of the Ashes. Another great, you know, talking point. And this is also the season where him and Littlefinger have the whole chaos is a ladder talk. I mean, that's obviously more to do with Littlefinger, but the thing is that, you know, for these earlier seasons, you do kind of pair Littlefinger and Varys together because they are so similar yet so opposite. They're like two sides of the same coin, right? And anytime those two are on screen together, it's great. And I mean, when you think about the players of the Game of Thrones, like, those are the players, you know what I mean? Like, that's who you kind of think of first and foremost. But yeah, that whole fucking chaos is a lot of speech. I mean, that's got to be like my favorite speech. Like, you know, it's got to be in all of Game of Thrones. Like, that's my favorite speech, is the Chaos is a Ladder speech. It's really, really fucking really well done. We get the death of Craster and Joe Mormont in this season as well. Obviously, I haven't talked about like Craster or Joe Mormont at this point, but yeah, they're really sort of integral parts of the story, because Craster, obviously, you know, having babies with his daughters and shit like that. You know, he's given the babies off to the White Walkers to become White Walkers, you know, and that is a big fucking deal, because those essentially like necromancers that are making the army of the dead, you know. So yeah, we have the death of Craster and Joe as well. So that's a big fucking. It's very sad, because obviously we know of Jorah Mormont, who's with Daenerys, and the fact that, you know, he was wanting this whole time to come back across to Westeros and prove himself, you know, again, and you'll never get to do that to his dad. So yeah, that's a pretty sad moment. So yeah, about halfway through the season, and this is where the big play for like Sansa starts coming in. So like, you've got the fact like Littlefinger's trying to get his hooks in, the Tyrells and the Lannisters all making a play for Sansa, because she is the key to the north. Getting an heir from Sansa means that, like, you know, they have essentially the key to the north, and that is a really, really big deal. So it's interesting to see people like, you know, like try and sway Sansa to become a part of their, you know, family, whether it even through the Tyrells, even though you kind of look at the Tyrells and you're like, oh, they're so nice, like that is Sansa's best bet. It's still a play for Sansa at the end of the day. So we learn of resurrection for the first time, and this is obviously where, again, with Beric Dondarrion and stuff, Thoros has been resurrecting Beric, and he's brought him back 6 times, which is crazy, because at this point of the story, you know, we've seen like, you know, little bits of magic and whatnot here and there, but this is like the first real big thing that happens here. Robb Stark beheading Lord Karstark. That is a great scene. I love this whole scene because it lives up to exactly what Ned would have done, you know. And even though like Karstark's not like basically their main bannerman, the Karstarks. So I believe they go back to a line of Starks as well, so they're actually related in some way. But yeah, that's a fucking big deal. But I love that whole scene. I love the sort of tense nature of it. Rain coming down, it's dark, and the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword, and Robb upholds that, you know, and he does it. But I love the fact that immediately after he beheads him, he throws the sword down, he clenches his fist with this like sort of like seething rage. I love that whole scene. And then we get Jaime's story about kingslaying. So obviously he's in the pool with, or like the bath with Brienne, and he's talking about how, oh, would you let all of these people die? You know what I mean? Just would you keep your oath then and stuff? And it's a great fucking scene. By what right does the wolf judge the lion and all of that? It's a great scene, and obviously this is where you start to turn around on Jaime, and you actually start seeing things from his point of view, and that just keeps going through every season, really. I love Tywin's plan. I love the fact that everything like sort of comes together. He's weaved a plan together that is so great. I love it. So essentially his idea was wedding Tyrion and Sansa together so he has the key to the north, but also Cersei and Loras so that he secures the Reach. So at that point, like, you know, at that point he's got most of Westeros that really matters. So that was a really cool to see Tywin's plan. So back with Ramsay Snow, one of the best, well, I would say one of the best, one of the most funny lines that I find is his line to Theon Greyjoy, basically saying, if you think this has a happy ending, you've not been paying attention. And the reason why I love that line is because it's not just obviously a message to Theon, like, you know, you're fucked with me, mate, but also a message to the audience, you know what I mean? Like, you know, Game of Thrones is not meant to have a happy ending. That's not what it's about, you know. So I love that. I love that line. One of my favourite scenes with Melisandre, actually, because she's taking Gendry back to Dragonstone at this point because he has King's Blood, is actually Gendry finding out that his father was Robert Baratheon, looking up at King's Landing saying, yeah, that was your father's house. And then it plays like Robert Baratheon's theme in the background. I really, really love that. It's just like Game of Thrones like has these moments of like sort of revelation or something coming together that just feels so like heartwarming in a way, and I really love it, and this is one of those moments. And I have a thing for the Baratheons. Like, I really fucking like the Baratheons. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just simple, like, because they're so like you know, that they're all about like duty, and there's a lot of respect that I can have for a Baratheon, you know. So I just really like those, and with Gendry being the only one left, even though he's a bastard, he can get legitimized. I hope he does, but yeah, we'll get into that later. But yeah, that was a great scene nonetheless. And this is also the season where the Hound takes Arya, and then we have that little sort of buddy, you know, that sort of partnership between those two. Arya actually gets a lot of like sort of mentors throughout her journey, and the great thing about Arya as a character is actually that every single one of them has like given her something, you know what I mean? Like, they've had their inflection put upon her, and you can see it in the way that she does things, with Syrio Forel and water dancing, even Yoren, the Night's Watch sort of like guy that's going around each of the jails and stuff and bring them back to the Night's Watch, with saying names before she goes to sleep. The Hound later on, she's a bit more like brutish and a bit like taking less bullshit essentially. And then obviously eventually with Jack and Hagar and the training with the Faceless Men. But I think like, you know, she's a unique character because of all of these different mentors that she's had. And the Red Wedding. Oh, fucking hell. This again. Yeah, like, do I really need to like talk about this? Really? I mean, we know what happens. It's hard to watch. This is hard to watch generally because, you know, more so than Ned. Like, with Ned, it's sort of like, because you're unexpected, like, it's not expected, it kind of just happens and you're just left to deal with it. But with the Red Wedding, it's fucking drawn out. Like, it's drawn out so much. Like, it's not immediate. Like, these people suffer. Like, you know, you have Talisa who's pregnant with young Ned, who gets stabbed in the belly. And then you have Rob, who gets fucking shot with arrows, crossbow bolts and stuff. And then, you know, he gets fucking stabbed in the heart by Roose Bolton, the bastard. He's not really a bastard, I'm just calling him a bastard as an insult. And then, obviously, Catelyn Stark being, you know, slit across the throat, but having to watch her, like, you know, her son die, you know. Yeah, hard scene to get through, that one, and it really does drag out. But so yeah, that's probably the most infamous scene of the whole show. But yeah, that was the end of season 3. So yeah, a very big season. At this point, like the whole state of affairs have changed. Like, everything's changed at this point. So going into season 4, there is a different sort of feeling around it. I said before about how season 2 and 3 kind of they're very similar feeling that I find, and they're sort of like interchangeable. Obviously not, because you have to have like the linear story kind of thing going on, but yeah, they sort of like feel the same, like one after the other. And season 4 is where it starts to feel a hell of a lot different, and yeah, so we'll get into that. Season 4, and Bran is finally beyond the wall. I do want to like say this now because I haven't said it before, but like my whole thing with Bran, I didn't like his like the story that was revolving around them all that much. I found it like rather boring. Bran's story picks up in season 6 when shit actually starts happening. Obviously, he's doing this whole walking thing and you know, green seeing and whatever. You know what I mean? And there's a few cool moments here and there, but generally, I found that like every time it like went back to what Bran was doing, you know, it kind of just it did bore me a bit. Obviously, this is the season where Reek is born, and like I said before, like, you know, this is where I forgive him. This is where I have to forgive him, because he is tormented to the point. He's been tortured to the point where he is, you know, he's physically, he's psychologically damaged. You know what I mean? And he will be like, he'll always feel this for life, for the rest of his life. So this is where I feel like he's had enough done to him. We also get the melting down of ice. So Ned's sword, that is a lot of fucking sword there. So yeah, that was able to create 2 blades. One of them Oathkeeper, and the other one Widow's Wail, right? So yeah, that's a big deal, especially because remember, Valyrian steel, that's you know, priceless at this point. And we get introduced to one of my favorite characters, you know, Prince Oberyn Martell. Like, this guy had the best entrance of the show. I don't think any other character had a better entrance than Oberyn. I love the fact he comes in to a brothel singing the Lannister theme. So like, how would you describe it? Like, it's so like, it's quiet rage with the guy. Like, he comes in, you know, he puts his hand like over the flame and whatnot, and he just has this aura of like, of just cool just a cool fucking guy, you know. And immediately I was on board with this guy. Like, he was just so fucking awesome to watch. I love him just going up to Lannisters. Like, obviously in the first scene you understand that he doesn't like Lannisters. And he's going up with these Lannister men, and he's saying that you're slow on the draw, and he fucking, you know what I mean? And just in a split second, he's drawn a knife and stabbed it into a guy's wrist. Like, that is so cool. You know, he had the best entrance, absolutely. And yeah, he was from Dorne as well, so he's the first Dornish guy that we meet. We get Daenerys losing control of Drogon at this point, so the dragons have grown up to the point now where, you know, mainly Drogon, I think, because obviously Drogon being sort of like the main dragon, you know, he kind of like has this alpha male thing going on. You can't really, you know, you can't tame a dragon. So at this point, Drogon is, you know, he's his own man at this point. We get Bronn teaching Jaime to fight with his left. I love this whole thing with Jaime finally returning to King's Landing, because he starts to find out that, like, he starts to see sort of Lannisters for what they are. You know, as of before, like, he's always been with them, he's been like a part of it, so you don't, like, he's never really thought about it, like, them as being like bad people or whatever. And now that he's back and he's been humbled and he's been through all of this, he comes back and Cersei's being a bitch to him, basically tell him, oh, you left, like, Cersei's saying, you left me. It's like, oh yeah, because Jaime is the one that decided to go be a prisoner for Robb Stark and whatnot, you know. And then you obviously have Tywin who's being hard with him and stuff, and he realizes, like, you know, he does, like, that they're not as lovable to him that he once thought. The Purple Wedding. Oh my god. Like, this was so satisfying. Everything, like, up until this point, Joffrey being a little shit. Fucking episode after episode. Everyone enjoyed this one. Everyone enjoyed it. And the fact that it comes so soon after, well, you say so soon after Robb Stark's death. They had a fucking full year to wait. But I feel like in episodes, like, you know, if you're watching it through and binging it, there's only 3 episodes between their deaths, and the great thing is it's not quick either. It's not a quick death. It's fucking, he has to writhe in pain, and I fucking enjoyed every second of it. It was great. It was so satisfying. Again, with Jaime, you know what I mean? This is like the sort of like the season where you're on board with Jamie throughout the whole thing. I mean, with season 3, it's the turn, right? It's the redemption. With season 4, this is where you're kind of on board with what Jamie is doing. You know, he still has this like love for his sister, which is like iffy, but you know, it's like you start to see like the good side of Jamie, very much so. Him giving Oathkeeper to Brienne so that she can go and protect the Stark children. You know, and that's something that Jamie would never do before, considering the fact of like what he's been through with the Starks and stuff in the previous seasons. So it's very nice to see Jamie like in that state. We get Jon and a bunch of people that went up north to Craster's Keep to obviously avenge Joe Mormont and you know, dish out some justice. And yeah, that was a great little fight scene between Jon and Carl fucking Tanner, because you know it was. I love the fights that aren't just simple like sword versus sword. You know what I mean? Well, I like those too, but you know, I like ones that you know, have something interesting in the mix. So obviously Jon would have Longclaw, and Carl Tanner had those like 2 little blades. Him being in close quarter combat had the advantage. But yeah, because there was one of Craster's daughters or whatever stabbed him in the back, and then an extension of that, Jon fucking launching Longclaw like straight through the back of the guy's head and out his mouth. That was, oof, that's meaty. That was very meaty. This is also the season where Daenerys is sort of learning how to rule. You know, she has built up her army at this point, and she's gone from like, you know, she's at Marine at this point. I think she's gone through like, you know, Astapor and Yunkai, and you know, she's gone through all of this sort of like conquest through the cities, retrieving like, you know, getting like freeing the slaves and stuff like that. But you know, war isn't just about conquering fucking, you know, cities and stuff like that. It's what is going to be happening after she receives the Iron Throne, which is her inevitable goal. The shit that she's going to have to be doing, and she's learning how to sort of deal with the commoners and learning how to rule at this point. So that's a nice little change, sort of the change of pace with Daenerys, because I've always felt with Daenerys, it's such a linear like path with her, because she doesn't come into contact with any of our like, you know, characters in Westeros for like a long time. So I always felt like with her it's sort of just a linear path, and it's just like, oh, what's going on over there? You know, so I wasn't always the most intrigued with what was going on with Dany, because I felt like it was just, you know, sort of repeating stuff. But I did enjoy her in season 4. We get Tyrion's trial. Now this, well, first of all, it's unbelievable. You know, it's the best acting that this show has ever had. You know, it absolutely is. Peter Dinklage in that trial scene is crazy, and that honestly is one of the best scenes of the show, period. Like, you know, Tyrion in trial, because one of the best things about it is Tyrion at this point has never been like, you know, angered with rage. You know what I mean? Something like it switched in him, this idea that because he's been ostracized for so long, and now, you know what I mean, he's thinking, oh yeah, you've wanted me here this whole time, fuck you all. You know what I mean? I just love how the fact that he just goes off and he's like, you know what it is? Fuck it, right? I want to trial by combat. It's just so great, you know? I just love that whole scene.
I will not give my life for Joffrey's murder, and I know I'll get no justice here, so I will let the gods decide my fate. I demand a trial by combat.
We obviously get Tyrion like looking for you know, people to be his champion. Obviously he looked at Bronn first. Bronn refused because he was like, he knew that he was going up against the Mountain, and that could easily end up in Bronn's death. I would have liked to have seen that, to be honest, because, you know, I like Bronn. I mean, Bronn's an MVP. I would almost bet against him again, like in the Mountain, but I don't know. Anything can fucking happen with the Mountain, as we well found out in the in episode 8 of this season. But Oberyn decides to become Tyrion's champion, which I love that whole scene as well. Like Oberyn coming in, basically saying like, "Oh, they said that you were a monster and stuff," but then I just looked at you and I was like, "No, that's a baby," you know. And I love that whole scene. He's like, "I will be your champion." Honestly, I love Oberyn. Like, he. I honestly, I'm so gutted he only had like 8 episodes. That's what he had, you know. Because I think like when it comes to Oberyn, to me, he is the one character in this show that I can like, I put in like their own category. He is unlike any other character in the show. I feel like there are certain characters that you can almost blend into being like, you know, very similar. You know, like obviously they're not like, you know, Tormund and like the Hound. Obviously they have their own like little quirks and stuff like that, but they're very similar in the way that they are, and you can blend a lot of characters together. But with Oberyn, there is nobody like him in the entire show. And, you know, coming into season 4, after everything has changed and things like that, like, he brought something, like, to this show that just freshened it up a lot, you know what I mean? And honestly, it sucks. It sucks how he's gone. Oh, we had Oberyn's death. So, obviously, against the Mountain, it's a shame because he had him for breakfast. Like, you know, he was great with that spear. Honestly, like just looking at him like spin the whole thing around, showing off his technique with the spear and stuff. Obviously, he had it poisoned, you know. But like when I was looking at it, like it's probably up there, like my favorite fight of the whole series. I just love it. And by fight, like I mean duel, like one-on-one. It's probably my favorite fight up there because I feel like there's so much. It's basically on Oberyn, right? It's like that's what it is. Because with the Mountain, like there's not much he's really doing there other than just swinging a big sword. Like there's not much technique there. But just straight up with Oberyn, like his technique with that spear is incredible. Like it just makes it feel like real to me. And to take you back to the first time I witnessed this episode, this was like horrible, because even with like after Ned Stark dying and you know like the Red Wedding, and like it was something that I wasn't expecting still. After the Red Wedding, that's when you have your senses are fucking heightened and you're alert and you're like, right, I'm gotta be fucking ready for the next one. And the setup to this fucking trial, I was worried the whole time, because like I said, like Oberyn to me was like you know, him paired with Tyrion was my favorite character season 4, and I was worried that Oberyn was going to suffer at like you know the Mountain's hands, because obviously the Mountain has been built up to be this fucking like huge motherfucker that can't be beaten. And you know, my heart was in my throat the whole time, and he was getting these licks in, he was getting these like little slices and whatnot. He had him on the floor, jumped up, places the spear right in his chest, and I'm like, oh my god, he's gonna do it! And I was so fucking hyped, I was fucking so excited, I was like relieved that I went through such a bunch of emotions. And then whilst he was down, he wouldn't finish it, and he starts saying, "Who give the order?" and stuff, and I'm like, and I knew it. I knew before the Mountain even moved again, I knew this. Like, if he just didn't care as much, about finding out who gave the order, because who would give it other than Tywin? It had to be, right? But yeah, like the thing that makes it worse as well is that someone who's so cool, calm, and collected throughout the whole show gets his chance, and then he loses it. And because of that, and then he gets the worst, most brutal death. It's like, no, he doesn't deserve it. No, don't ruin this for me. Don't ruin such a great character. And he gets his head busted. Like, it's nuts. Like, his head explodes. Like, there's a moment, right, where he's obviously, where the Mountain's pressed his eyes in, right? But there's a moment just before it like literally explodes where you see his head like expand. It's horrible. It's so nuts. I don't think I've ever witnessed a death more like, whoa, like, you know, like that was horrible. Like, I don't think I felt as bad after Ned's death, Red Wedding death, and that says a lot from a character that came in and had 8 episodes. Like, yeah, so that was a big deal. That was horrible. If there was any character I could bring back, it would be Oberyn. Absolutely, it wouldn't be Ned, wouldn't be Rob. Like, I would bring back Oberyn. I really would. I just think he's so different to everyone else. He's such a enigma to me. You know, I just love him. We get the Watchers on the Wall episode as well, like the second big set piece. It's all taking place at the Wall, Castle Black, for the whole episode, and you know, it's like it's essentially Game of Thrones Helm's Deep. It's so fucking great. I love that whole episode as well. You know, it's just, these episodes are crazy. And the thing that I love about it as well is that the Night's Watch members actually seeming like brothers at this point, you know, because we've always been told that, like, oh, they're the brothers of the Night's Watch, you know what I mean? You're supposed to think of them as your brothers, but you've never really seen it, other than John's like crew, right, with like Gren and Ed and whatnot, yeah. And Sam, but this is where like they all come together. Alistair Thorne is great in this, you know what I mean? He's fucking. This is a thing with Alistair Thorne, right? Yes, he's a dick, but I do actually understand with Alistair, you know what I mean? He's a prick, yes he is, absolutely he is, but I do admire his sort of his passion for the Night's Watch, you know, I really do. You have Gren, who, oh my god, that guy, like, he deserves big ups, because he was sent into the tunnel to stop the giants getting through, and he actually managed to do it as well, so big ups to fucking Gren for that one. And even Ollie, you know, even Ollie stepped up, which, okay, fair enough, I'll give him some credit for that, but I still hate that little fucker. And then you even had Sam stepping up as well, which was obviously that's a big deal, because Sam, if you remember at the beginning, was like a coward, and he's done a lot since since like those episodes that we met him. You know, he was the first to kill White Walker, and then like honestly in this episode he really does shine. And then we get the Ygritte death, which yeah, that one kind of sucks. She got her last you know, nothing in, you know, but you know, I feel like she had like a sort of, you know, I feel like that was a good time to sort of to kill her off, I would say, you know. I feel like they'd done everything they could with her. That story had kind of played out, you know, and yeah, dying in John's arm, and that's a really good sort of, that's a really awesome shot as well of them two, you know, like John holding Ygritte while everything's going on in the background, really cool. Stannis shows up at the Wall in the episode after, which I fucking love. Again, like, you know what I mean? Like, when it comes to Baratheons, you know what I mean? I just love him. I just do. Like, we know what happens with Stannis later on, right? And it's almost fucking irredeemable. It really is. But everything else, I just love the guy. Because like, you know, the Night's Watch brought, like, they sent word to all of the kings and, you know, the lords and whatever, right, for help at the Wall against the wildlings, and Stannis is the only one that showed up, you know. Obviously he'd been at the Iron Bank, you know, to get some money and be able to buy up some forces and stuff like that, you know, and they came straight from Bravos over to the Wall, so it's really cool to see them like that far north as well. And then we finally get Bran's arrival at the tree, finally, after all these fucking seasons. It just felt like so long, and then you don't even get them in season 5. You have to wait until season 6. It's like it's such a fucking tease, it really is. We get the Brienne versus Hound fight, which is another fucking really good fight, a really awesome one-on-one between those two, like, behemoths. It's like a fucking heavyweight fight between these two. Like, it's just so fucking brutal, like that, like, you know, biting off ears, kicking fucking Brienne in the cunt, you know what I mean, and throwing the Hound off a fucking cliff. Honestly, it's so good, that fight. I really enjoyed it. And then to end off season 4, Jaime frees Tyrion. Tyrion goes on you know, he goes to kill Tywin, finds Shay, kills her. Thank fuck, because she fucking deserved it. Honestly, the fact that she stayed just so she could ruin Tyrion's life. What a bitch. Honestly, she fucking deserved death. And then yeah, killing Tywin on the shitter. I mean, here's the thing. I was loving it because it's Tyrion, and I love Tyrion as much as I love Tywin. Like, Tywin had it coming after the shit that he was pulling there at the end about, you know, with Tyrion. Like, I felt like Tywin was pushing it just a bit too much with Tyrion in this season. So at the end of the day, he deserved it. It's just nuts, the fact that Tywin, like, someone who, like, has this aura of just like, you fucking respect me, you know what I mean, and that's where he dies, on the shitter. It's just such disrespect, isn't it? But yeah, so the season ends off with Tyrion going with Varys across the sea, and also Arya crosses the sea as well because she's heading to Bravos to train to be a faceless man. So yeah, that was season 4. Absolutely enjoyed this season from start to finish. You know, Oberyn like pushed it even for like between Oberyn and Tyrion, like it was just risen like so fucking high. It was such a great season. You know, those two, it's like with Robert and Ned in season 1, like they're just you know, pushed the season up to a like a caliber, like a level that's so high. Really enjoyed that season. So yeah, that was season 4. Season 5, and Tyrion and Varys have now reached Essos. So yeah, Tyrion's been spending a lot of time in a crate. Fucking, what a horrible fucking place to be in that would have been. Honestly, I don't envy Tyrion one bit for being in that fucking thing. We have the Mance Rayder being put to death. Yeah, King Beyond the Wall, he would not bend the knee to Stannis, so therefore he was going to get burned at the stake. But Jon shot him with an arrow so that the wildlings wouldn't have to actually hear him scream, which you know, I really enjoyed that. You know, at this point, like I love Jon's character at this point, because he's sort of like the hero that you back. You know, he's the one he's your main hero at this point. Like I said, Rob's gone and everything like that. Oberyn's not around anymore. You know what I mean? So Jon is your guy. He's your hero at this point. And I love Jon from this point like forward. I feel like in the previous seasons he had great moments. You know, but I never thought of him as like the hero of the story until this season. So this is the season where we get introduced to Dawn and the Sand Snakes and all of that good stuff. So yeah, my opinions on those stories are could have done without them. They're basically like in season 4 with like Oberyn, you know what I mean, the good part of Dawn, him like lifting that season up to be the next level. In this season, everything relating to Dawn brings it down and makes it worse. So yeah, that like anything relating to Dawn really in that, and you know, was terrible. Like the only bit that like I was actually ever invested in was the fact like Jaime going there to see Marcella. That was it. Jon Snow ended up becoming Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. That was another great scene, like that whole them voting to see who would become the next Lord Commander. Sam, fucking great job. He was the MVP in that one. You know, I love the line. I think it's something along the lines of he's the commander we turn to when the night was darkest, and I really enjoy that. And this ends up being like one of my favorite moments from season 5, and it like I don't think by any right it should be, because I don't think it's all that important, but Jon beheading Janos Slynt. It's so fucking satisfying. It's probably, honestly, I probably found it more satisfying than Joffrey's death. Like that's how high I actually put it, because I don't know what it was. I hated Joffrey and I hated Ramsay Bolton, right? Because yes, you know, they're kind of put there as characters that you're supposed to. They're evil fuckers and they're sadistic. But there was something about Janos Slynt that I just fucking despised. Like, just anytime he was on screen, I was like, this fucking cunt needs to be like, we need to hurt him as much as we can. And like him just like being up to the headman's block and saying that, like, you know, and like fucking begging for his life, and I'm just afraid. I'm like, you fucking prick, you deserve this. And yeah, I fucking enjoyed that. We get the start of the Sparrow storyline, so everything with the High Sparrow and now the sort of like religion of the Seven, and that's becoming a big thing in King's Landing. One of the things about that storyline, you know, I didn't like a lot of it, because I felt like that was all that was happening in King's Landing. And it was a bit overbearing, I found. But one of my favourite things about it was it actually made Cersei sympathetic, which I thought was impossible. You know what I mean? Like, how the fuck do you make Cersei sympathetic? You know, like how do you I don't know how they managed to do it, but I really enjoyed it, actually. You know, because it just means that, you know, Cersei isn't just a one-note character, you know what I mean? And it means that you actually do feel for her at some point, and but, you know... So yeah, I actually really enjoyed that part of the storyline, but I feel like it was almost like a bit too much. It felt like that was all that was happening at some point. One of my favorite scenes with Stannis comes with it's him talking to Shireen about saving her life from Grayscale, right? And it's such a powerful scene. It's such a nice scene because most of what you see of Stannis isn't him being a loving parent. You know what I mean? You rarely kind of see it. But this is where, like, it's just at its peak, and it's unfortunate because of what happens later on in the season. But, you know, it's such a nice scene anyway, and it's one of my favourite Stannis scenes. Barristan Selmy dies fighting the Sons of the Harpy. This was... It sucked to lose him. It really did, because... Well, here's the thing. I mean, he took out how many of those fuckers before he went down? Here's the thing. When he came in, like, you know, with his sword like this, right? It was so earned. It really was, because you'd had talk before about how good Barristan Selmy actually was, and it's crazy because up until that point, at least on first time viewing, I remember when he came in and I was thinking, shit, yeah, well, I've never seen him fight before. And it was such like a giddy, like, oh, fuck, you guys are fucked now. Even though you've never seen him fight, you knew because of what people had said, like, nah, you're fucked here, mate. And unfortunately, he just ended up being outnumbered in the end. But, you know, he was just outnumbered. Like, between him and Grey Worm, they fucking, like, slaughtered those cunts. They were gone, you know? And they just killed enough of them to be, like, when they remained alive. I don't think Barristan remained alive much longer afterwards, but they remained alive long enough to kill them all off. And, you know, that was... Yeah, that was tough, but, yeah, Barristan Selmy... badass. Tyrion and Jorah. Obviously, Jorah has taken Tyrion prisoner by this point and taken him to Daenerys, even though that's where Tyrion was going anyway. And they're going through Old Valyria, and that's a really great scene. I love that scene because it is probably the most fantasy scene out of all of Game of Thrones, because it's a dwarf and a guy in a boat sailing through the Doom of Valyria. It's all just fucking like ruins and black and obsidian. There's fucking stone men, and Drogon flies over top, which is great. I love that scene. I love Tyrion seeing a dragon for the first time. It's not really said in the show, but I know from the books that Tyrion loves dragons and he's fascinated by them. And the thing is with Tyrion that I don't get with the other characters, and I wish I did. Like the character's first time seeing dragons, right? I feel like you should be like stood dead in your tracks and in awe of what you're seeing, right? And I feel like Tyrion is the only one that does that. I can't be the only one, surely. That is a great scene, because I love Tyrion just looking up like he can't believe what's happening. I feel like later on in season 7, when on the field of fire, when Jaime sees it for the first time, we don't get enough of a reaction. You know, because obviously a lot of it happens in season 7, because that's when they're in Westeros, but never mind, it is what it is. And of course, later on in the series, Tyrion would meet with Daenerys for the first time. This is a big fucking deal, because you're talking about two of the main cast that have actually met in the show after 5 seasons. Tyrion and Daenerys meeting for the first time. That is a really fucking big deal. You know, we were just waiting throughout this whole season of like, is he going to get there? Is he going to get there? You know what I mean? And because it's something that, you know, like, it's like the Avengers and stuff like that. You know what I mean? They've had their own movies, but seeing them together and just seeing their dynamic is something that you like kind of long for, you know. And I think that's what makes the later seasons like so much better, because like it's earned, because you've waited for so long for this to eventually happen. When it does finally happen, it's earned, and it feels really, really, really fucking cool. We then get one of the best episodes of Game of Thrones with Hardhome, and it's you know, it's it's a nice change of pace this episode, because I felt like with season 5 it was a bit of a downer. You know, especially after season 4, which was so good. Season 5 ended up being like not the best. That's what my thoughts were on it anyway. But with Hard Home though, it ends up being like one of the best, like the best episodes in Game of Thrones. So, you know, I mean, I would say a lot of people think the same. That whole fucking set piece where Jon and crew, you know, Tormund and Ed and whatnot have gone to Hardhome, and then, you know, he's met with giants, like the giant one, and then the fucking army of the dead come. We get our first real look. Like, I mean, we've seen the Night King before, but this is where we see him like sort of in his element, like rising fucking people from the dead, giving Jon a first look, and obviously the stare down. So yeah, that whole fucking thing was great. Jon killing his first White Walker with Longclaw, so that's obviously the confirmation that Valerian Steel and Dragon Glass have the same properties. So yeah, big information. And then, of course, we get Shireen being burnt alive. You see, there's been like hard things in this show. None of them are harder than that one. You know, with like, I just think it's a different feeling to like things like the Red Wedding. You know, like it's very like, it's like, because this one's not nice. It really isn't nice. If you guys have, you know, if there's anybody here that's actually like watched my other stuff, you may have heard me say before that like I struggle with the deaths of women and children, and this is a little girl. You know what I mean? Like, it's just it's hard. Like, we don't get to see it, but you hear it, and that's too much. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, the show shouldn't have shown it, because I feel like I hate people that say that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to show this kind of stuff. It's like, they can show it if they want, right? But like, it is tough. It's tough to witness that whole thing. And I think that makes it even worse is like the fact that the reason why they did it was because Melisandre gave out the idea, right, that if they do this, it'll mean that the snow will melt and they can carry on. The problem is that, yeah, the fact that like it worked, right? So yeah, the army could carry on, but the fact that people left because they lost morale, because they just saw their king burn their own daughter alive. Like, you know, they're not going to fight for him after that. He was just so far, like, Stannis was so far gone because of Melisandre in his ear, keeping on, like, you know. And it is one of those things where, like, with Stannis, it's irredeemable, that whole thing. And it's hard because I really like Stannis otherwise. I feel like his duty first thing is very respectable and admirable, and I feel like he was there for Jon when no one else would be. You know, I feel like you know, he was, you know, he was a very, very respectable, admirable guy, and that sucked seeing that. And Brienne ends up killing them there at the end, saying "do your duty." You know what I mean? So even at the end, he's saying like, you know, "do your duty." But just seeing how defeated Stannis is, you know, not like the fact that he just went through a fucking war with the Boltons, but the fact that, you know, mentally he's just, you know, psychologically he knows he's done a horrible thing there. So yeah, that was tough. Arya kills Meryn Trant, another one. Like, this is nuts. Like, my favourite moments in season 5 are Janos Slynt dying, Meryn Trant dying, and of course, like, fucking Hardhome. Like, you know, like, two of those are just watching people who deserved to get their shit kicked in, got their shit kicked in this in this season, and it's so brutal. Like, you know, like, I would have loved if Janos Slynt had gotten just as much fucking of a brutal death as what Meryn Trant got, but at least one of them got it, you know. And then at the very end, Jon is betrayed by the Watch, for the Watch, shall I say. Yeah, so, you know, Alyssa, and then like a bunch of unknowns, and then of course Ollie decides to join in, the little fucker. Oh, you motherfucker! Like, I'm sorry, I don't care. I don't care. If he's a kid, right? If you're old enough to kill someone, right, then you're old enough to receive the punishment for it. Simple as that. You know what I mean? Like, just fucker, little shit. Yeah. But yeah, that was season 5. So season 5 was a sort of a down one, really. You know, it wasn't the best season. So yeah, but that was season 5. Still had some good moments though. Season 6, and Theon has returned. He is no longer Reek anymore, which is nice to see. Obviously, he's saved Sansa from Ramsay Bolton. They've jumped from the walls of Winterfell, and Brienne has come and saved those two. So yeah, that was a nice little sort of a return of a character in a way, because Reek is so different from Theon, you know. But it's nice to see Theon like return to his former self and realize his you know, who he's loyal to, you know. Doran Martell, killed by Ilaria Sand. For fuck's sake, Dawn. They just don't... they're like the worst... They're the worst part of Game of Thrones, Dawn. Like, they really fucking are, honestly. Like, why? Why do you kill Doran for? You know what I mean? That's Oberyn's brother, who apparently you're saying you're doing all this for, because Doran would... It's just, honestly, they're the worst. They're the worst. We are finally back with Bran Stark, and we are actually getting some fucking meaty stuff with Bran, because you know, as I said before, I never liked the stuff with Bran. Like, there was some interesting things with the Worgen and the Green Scene and whatnot, but it was mostly just the fact that they were taking so long to get anywhere that it just felt so like painful to get through. But yeah, like I said, this is where Bran's stuff actually starts getting interesting with the Three-Eyed Raven and all of that. So yeah, this is all good stuff from here on out. We get Tyrion petting the dragons and letting them loose from obviously being in captivity. Rhaegal and Viserion were kept in captivity for a while as well. So they're smaller than Drogon, but it's such a nice scene as well. Tyrion being able to go up that close, pet them and let them loose. And there's also like a little sort of nod to dragons actually understanding like humans. You know, they're supposed to be smart creatures. So yeah, it's a nice little nod to that. It's just a nice scene in general. We get Theon, who has finally decided to return home, which is a nice little scene. And then partnered with that, we get the death of Baelon by Euron. So we've got a new character, Euron Greyjoy. Now, I will say in this season, I wasn't sold on Euron as a character. I heard of his exploits in the book, and he's supposed to be a bit of a nutter. Like, he's a harsh character. Like, he is some bad kind of bloke, you know. He's a real bad man. But I wasn't really settled on him in season 6. But in season 7, I'm on board with the guy. I think he's really good. So due to Bran having these flashbacks thanks to the Three-Eyed Raven and whatnot, we get the Tower of Joy. So we get Arthur Dayne. We have got to look at obviously Howland Reed and whatnot, and that fight, like, so incredible. that whole fight is great, because Arthur Dayne is supposed to be like the best swordsman like Westeros has ever fucking seen. I believe George R.R. Martin said that if like Barristan Selmy in his prime would be able to stand up to him, like, and they would probably be on level par. But like, you know, the great thing about Arthur Dayne is he's two swords, you know, he's dual wielding. And you know, him, like, this is so fantasy, this sword fight, but I just fucking love it. Like, you know, him taking on like 6 dudes by himself is just really fucking cool to witness. But yeah, that was a really cool scene. Like I said, like, Bran's stuff in this season is so much better than anything previous. We get the return of Rickon Stark as well, like, after I don't even know how many seasons at this point, but he is brought to Ramsay with the head of Shaggy Dog, so that's another dire-wolf gone. Fuck's sake. At this point, I think we only have 2, right? As far as I'm aware. I think Nymeria's out there somewhere, and we have Ghost. But yeah, so that's great. So yeah, I mean, at that point, I kind of just knew that Rickon wasn't going to make it. I just knew, because he wasn't a really big Stark at all. You know what I mean? Like, he's one that a lot of people forget about, because he's never really prominent. We get all of the mutineers getting hanged for killing Jon, which is yeah, that that is a sort of a bittersweet one for me. You know what I mean? I love the fact that Alisar goes out like a man, like with honor. Of course, as much honor as, like, you know, killing your own Lord Commander can be, but, you know, I feel like his sort of allegiance to the Night's Watch and stuff like that, that I feel like, you know, it's almost somber to see him go, you know what I mean? Especially with, like, his last words, like saying, you know, he fought, he lost, you know, but he says that, you know, if it happened again, he prayed that he would do it again. You know, so I like the fact that he's so, like, on board with the decision that he made, that he would probably do it again. You know, so I mean, Alisar Thorn was one of those that, you know, I actually enjoyed. Like, you know, even though he was a dick, I did enjoy him. But like I said, the bittersweet thing, that was the bitter one. The sweet one was Ollie for me. Like, and just the fact that he's there with the noose around his neck with this stupid fucking pout on him, like this angry pout, like. It's just, honestly, like, after Alisar and just seeing Ollie there, I just couldn't help but smile through that whole thing. I was just like, you little shit, you deserve it. You just deserve it. You know what I mean? Like, don't even try and be angry at John for what? For what he did. You know what I mean? Ollie fucking deserved it for me, so yeah, I did enjoy that. But then immediately after that, John gives up being a member of the Night's Watch. You know, he basically was only under oath until, you know, until he died. So he died, so he doesn't need to be a member of the Night's Watch anymore, right? His oath was done the moment that he died, and he hands off Lord Commander, and Ed becomes the new commander. And then pretty much immediately after that, John and Sansa reunite. So that was that's great. Like, finally we're getting some, like, you know, the Starks are sort of reuniting, and that's a big fucking deal considering how long we've been away, where, you know, they're all split up everywhere, you know. So yeah, that was a big deal. Daenerys killing the Khalasars and now leading the Dothraki. That's a big deal. Like, you know, I don't know how. I can't remember if that actually said how many Dothraki that she actually has, but it's a good amount. I think it might be like 40,000 or something, and all of them have horses. It's a big army. We get some information regarding the Children of the Forest as well, about how they actually made the Night King, and I believe they did it in a way, like, they made the Night King as a way to protect them against the First Men, right? Because they were at war with the First Men at that point, and that's why they made the White Walkers. And it makes sense, like, the reasons now that we know that the White Walkers, when they, you know, they cut off body parts of people and they make these, like, sort of symbols, why they look similar to the Children of the Forest symbols, because that's where they originally came from. That's where they originate from. So yeah, that's a big bit of information that we got there. The Night King touches Bran in his vision. That breaks the seal into the cave, where, like, underneath the tree, so they're allowed to get in. And then starts a really fucking, like, a big scene. This whole thing with Bran and Hodor is nuts. And here's the thing, like, it was sad. It was really sad, because I mean, but it was sad for all the right reasons. Like, this is the best thing for Hodor to do. Absolutely. Like, this is the best thing that Hodor could have ever gotten, is this whole full circle. It was always supposed to happen this way. Like, I just think the Destiny for Hodor thing is such a big part of Season 6, and one of, like, you know, one of the biggest parts of Season 6. Like, that whole thing. And it's Hodor. Like, it's Hodor. It's like, it's a character that says Hodor, you know what I mean? Like, it's the most simple character, yet one like a fan favorite. I just love the fact that his story is so full circle in a way that people never expected. The fact that Bran was hearing Mira from outside while he was in a vision, and he walked into Hodor, or I guess he walked into Willis during the dream, which fucked him up in the past, which meant that, you know, all the way up until, you know, like, this was his destiny. He was always meant to come here to hold the door for Bran, and it's such a fucking, like, a strong, powerful moment. But I really, like I said, like, it was sad, but I enjoyed how that played out, because I don't think after that I think that's the perfect end for Hodor, you know. And after everything Arya has been going through in these past couple of seasons with the waif and all of that kind of stuff, there was some like iffy stuff with Arya, I thought, in when she was in Bravos, you know, like that kind of dragged on a bit. And then there's the thing with her being stabbed, yet she's able to like run and things like that. There was some iffy stuff with that, but yeah, I think there was a very sort of like relieved and excited feeling when Arya said that she was going to go home. And the nice thing about it as well is Jack and Hagar actually given the smile towards Arya as well. I really enjoyed that, you know, because it gives that idea that Jaqen's actually proud of her, which I really like. And yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all we need from Jaqen. I think, you know, I thought that he wasn't as good as he was in season 2 in these like last couple of seasons, but you know, he was still a great character. You know, he just had that mystery about him. We get the Battle of the Bastards. This is another fucking massive set piece again, like just on the fucking on a field. Just it kind of gives this sort of image of like almost like trench warfare, really, like World War One, like real, like, you know, gritty stuff. You know, obviously with Jon being like, you know, like essentially like drowning in bodies and stuff like that. It's really like rough stuff. But like it ends up for one of like the most greatest like sort of scenes ever, is Jon facing down a wall of horses. You know what I mean? I just love that scene so much. Again, like I said, like in season 5, like this is from season 5 onward, it's the moment where I see Jon as the hero, like the hero type character. And when he does stuff like this, it's just awesome to behold. But I think one of the best things about this, like at the end of the Battle of the Bastards, is where Ramsay like knows that he's fucked. He's heading back into Winterfell, and you just see Jon, Tormund, and Wun-Wun, just 3 of them running after him. Just 3 of them, not even the rest of the army or anything, just 3 of them chasing them in. It's just so great just watching them, because they're just like, nah, you're not fucking getting away, you bastard. Yeah, and after everything, after fucking so many seasons where the Starks haven't had Winterfell, Jon gets in, beats Ramsay within an inch of his life, and the Starks have Winterfell again. Like, it's one of those moments where you're just like, oh, yes, things are right in the world eventually. Finally, we're back to what it should have been. So yeah, that was a very big moment. And then Ramsay obviously suffers a fucking horrible, ironic, poetic fate, where Sansa allows the dogs on Ramsay. So yeah, that's brutal as well, because you actually get to see that, and that's like, oh, that's nasty. And then Cersei blows up the fucking sept with like everybody in it. This is nuts, like, because this is at the point like where, you know, we're at the end of sort of like Act 2 in a way, about to go into Act 3. Like, storylines just need to be like, you know, like we need to just start getting rid of characters that aren't going to be you know, that don't really need to be in the next act, really. So, you know, Marjorie is killed, Loras is killed, the High Sparrow and whatnot. So, you know, the Sparrows are essentially killed off as well. The only thing is, I'm sure Kevin Lannister was in there. You know what I mean? So I guess Cersei just didn't give a fuck. You know what I mean? Just oh, whatever, don't give a fuck. I mean, Kevin he didn't really have much to do anyway throughout the season. So, but also like one of the greatest things as well about this whole like all of this going on is Grandmaster Pycelle dying. After like so long, I just thought this fucking honestly, Pycelle is just such a sleazy motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, this is what he deserves. And it was great. We get Arya confronting Walder Frey and fucking slitting his throat. Oh my god! Again, like another moment of just sheer bliss. Like, yes, he got what he deserved. There's a lot of that like in these last 2 seasons. What I'm thinking with obviously Janos Slynt and fucking Meryn Trant, you know, Walder Frey, Ramsay, like all of them just getting what they fucking deserved. And yeah, the Walder Frey one's like, oh yes, it's great. I love it. And then we get the sort of run up to the final scene, which is all of it. Like from the very beginning, we get obviously Bran, who is at the Tower of Joy again, and we get the confirmation that Jon is actually the the son of Lyanna Stark. You know, and obviously the baby, the you know, the scene change into Jon's actual face. Jon gets, you know, he becomes king of the North. Cersei becomes queen of the Seven Kingdoms. It's fucking nuts. And then Daenerys finally crossing the sea after 6 seasons is such a big moment. Like, just honestly, season 6, like episode 10, Winds of Winter is just like one of the, such a great episode from start to finish. Like, so much shit is just like wrapped up and happened. That's what I said. Like, it just feels like the end of an act 2 into the final act, you know. So yeah, it was just a solid episode and solid season as well. I really enjoyed season 6. So yeah, that was season 6, and we're gonna be moving on to season 7. And finally, the penultimate season, season 7, the last one we're going to talk about today before season 8 comes around in the next couple of days, which I can't fucking wait for. It's fucking finally here, guys, after 2 years. Holy shit. Okay, so this season had the most holy shit moments out of every other season. I mean, it's not surprising. We are in Act 3 at this point. Everyone's in Westeros, so it was always going to be that way, even with 3 less episodes, and we're going to get 1 less episode in season 8, but each episode is plenty, like, enough time, you know what I mean? It's going to be crazy. I can't wait. So yeah, I'm going to just list off the most important stuff out of this, because I mean, looking at how many pages I actually wrote down of information on season 7 and knowing how long this video is going to be, I'm just going to list all of the main points. So we kick things off in season 7 with something huge, the massacre of House Frey. Like, that's it, House Frey is gone already. Like, Arya's been back in Westeros, like, how long? And she's already wiped a house off the face of the earth. Now, I don't think she's going to be, you know, I would be surprised if she manages to wipe out another house. You know, because there's only a certain amount of episodes left, but it was a hell of a fucking way to come back. I love the fact that, obviously, using Walder as a way to get everyone in to drink poisoned wine is a great way. Winter came for House Frey. That quote, a number of emotions went through me, but mostly it was just like elation at the decimation of House Frey, because I fucking hated that house. I mean, there's a few houses in Westeros that, like, you know, I despise. Like, House Frey was definitely one of them. Cersei invites Euron to King's Landing to make an alliance, so that was something which I actually anticipated would happen before season 7 came out. Generally, just because I was thinking at that point we had, you know, we had the Targaryens, Tyrells, Martells, and then Yara and Theon. And I was just thinking, like, you know, because I had a feeling that, you know, there would never come a time where Jon and Daenerys would be fighting against each other. So I was just thinking, okay, well, Euron's not going to join in with Theon and Yara, is he? Really? And we've got to make this fair somehow. So I did anticipate that would happen. But this is the season where Euron, like, I'm on board with Euron as a character in this one. In season 6, I wasn't as much. But in season 7, like, I really like the character. Like, I like how, like, so, like, out there he is. Just to get everything with Samwell, like, at Old Town, like, out of the way. Because, you know, I feel like it kind of just all encapsulates, like, one pretty much goal that he has, which is to get information regarding, like, the Long Night and the White Walkers and how to defeat them, and every single bit of information you can possibly get on that. There's some key information and stuff that he gets with, you know, the like, annulment that Prince Rhaegar had with Elia, so that, you know, furthers that whole thing with Rhaegar, Lyanna, and Jon. And of course he has that thing with Jorah as well, where he actually treats his grayscale, which is nuts. I mean, you know, from what we'd heard of the thing, like, that is, like, near untreatable, you know, like, only a few people have ever done it and stuff, and that's, like, with children and not, like, somebody who's, like, middle-aged, you know. So yeah, that was crazy. But yeah, that's pretty much Samwell's whole deal in season 7. And then Daenerys finally on Westeros. Of course, at the end of last season, it was just a joy just to see her on the ocean. You know what I mean? Just sailing to Westeros. But then it's just a next level thing when she's actually, like, on land in Westeros. Of course, hitting Dragonstone. And that whole scene was perfect. I don't know who's, like, like decision it was, like, to be like, we're not going to have her say anything, no one's going to say anything in that last thing, they're just going to let it play out. That, like, I don't know how long the fucking whole, like, that whole scene went on for, of her, like, hitting Dragonstone all the way up into the map room, and then just saying, shall we begin? Absolutely fantastic. I also love the fact that Daenerys, as soon as she's on Westeros, looks at the throne, and instead of sitting on it, goes straight to the map to, like, the map room to, like, strategize and things like that. I love that, because I felt like it was almost like a nod to the audience, as almost like, yeah, you know what, we've waited long enough with Daenerys, like, on the other side, like, waiting it out and stuff, and now it's time for action. So yeah, I really love that whole scene. We get a look at Cersei's plan to deal with the dragons and stuff like that with Qyburn. He's obviously created a massive dragon ballista type thing, so that, yeah, so it can take down the dragons with ease. And I gotta be honest, I was, like, so pissed off at Qyburn for letting her, like, shoot that thing into Balerion's skull. Because, like, to me, I'm like, Balerion's skull, it's like so, like, it's almost pristine, like, and intact. It's like, just leave it, just don't fucking ruin it, you bitch. So yeah, that was I hated it, but, you know, it served its purpose, I guess, you know. So we get Tyrion's plan to use the Westerosi armies to surround King's Landing while the Unsullied go to take Castle Rock. And it's such a great plan, but I tell you what, I don't know whose idea it was in the end. If it was Jaime's, I kind of do hope it was Jaime's in the end, because he's known more so in the books to be more of an, like, he's not all that smart, you know what I mean? Military mind, maybe, you know, maybe a bit better in that regard, but him to, like, you know, to basically clear out all of the granary, like the stocks and stuff like that, all the food storage that was in there, you know, all the mines had been cleared out, there was no gold there, so basically they were just holding on to walls, and that was it. So, you know, and then obviously take their main force. Randall Tarley had basically betrayed the Tyrells and joined the Lannisters, and then, you know, went on to attack Highgarden, which, yeah, that's one of those moments where you're like, oh, fuck! Like, you know, that was a smart play, you know, and because that's the thing as well, when you're hearing Tyrion's plan and he's, like, you know, running you through it, you're like, this obviously can't go wrong. Even after 7 seasons of Game of Thrones where you've been, you know, where it subvert your expectations, like, constantly. But because it's Tyrion, you believe what he's saying because he's a smart guy. He's one of the smartest people in the show. And, you know, I never expected, to be honest, in season 7, yeah, Tyrion gets, like, he gets a bad rap in season 7 because, you know, like, nothing he says plans out well, really. I think the only thing he really gets across in, like, and does well in season 7 is to get the meeting of all of, like, with Cersei and Daenerys and Jon and all of that in one place, you know, at the Dragon Pit. But other than that, like, you know, he doesn't do very well in season 7. We get the battle with Euron as well, his first, like, you know, huge battle that he's involved with, and that is so, like, I love the way that he comes in like an absolute maniac, because that's how he's written in the books, and that was what I was kind of waiting for after, like, season 6, and I was like, I don't think he does. It feels like he doesn't have that edge like that Euron, the character, should do, and I love the fact that I don't know what changed between between season 6 and 7, because I feel like he come in pretty late in season 6, right? So I wonder if he was like, if he didn't have a lot of time to, like, study the character and whatnot, and then the time that he had, like, off in between, like, seasons before he started, like, shoot and stuff like that, if he'd actually studied the character and got some of that, like, influence from the book character and started acting that way, because I really, really like him in season 7. We get Jon arriving at Dragonstone. This is, like, just setting up, like, an amazing meeting between such, like, big characters in the show. I mean, not only does he, like, meet up with Tyrion again, which is a great like reuniting of those two characters, you know, because it's like all the way back in like the first episode that these characters, like, sort of, like, get along, and then in the second episode as well of season 1, and they already, like, have that sort of bond. All dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes and stuff like that, so they already have that bond. And it was also the thing of, like, I feel like Jon was, like, the only one from the very get-go that actually, like, you know, like, saw Tyrion, like, almost as a friend, you know. So yeah, that was a really good reuniting. And of course, we finally get Jon Snow and Daenerys meeting. Everyone's been wanting this for so fucking long. It's nuts to think that like we've waited this long for this kind of thing to happen, and when it finally happened, I remember, and I love the fact that it's so drawn out. Like they never like cut away from it for a while. Like you're in there with those two. And because you've been with both of their characters, you know where each one of them is coming from. It's a great back and forth. It's not like immediately nice off the bat, which I like. I like the fact that they have to like confront each other with what they want and the way they see things because of what they've been through. And the great thing about them is because you've like sort of been with them since the very beginning, you kind of understand that both of them are actually very similar in what they do, you know. So yeah, I really love that whole meeting. It was great. Thanks to Euron as well. Obviously, he's got like Yara and whatnot. He's captured her. He also captured Alaria Sand and her daughter Tyene. Killed the other two Sand Snakes. Yeah, great, love that. And gifted her to Cersei. So yeah, she did the whole poison thing to Alaria Sand's daughter Tyene. And yeah, hopefully that's the last we see of her. I don't care about the fucking Dornish at all. And big ups to my last Cersei for doing that, because honestly, anything Dawn related that's not Oberyn, I could care less about. So yeah, like hopefully that's just the last we see of them. I don't think there's any need for them to return in any way, shape or form. I think Alaria's fucked in there, you know what I mean? I think either they're keeping her alive long enough, like, you know, to just live out her days there. I don't think we need to see her at all. Of course, with Jon over in Dragonstone, we have Sansa that was left in the north in Winterfell to rule in his stead. Littlefinger's there, obviously playing his game and whatnot. Sansa's actually doing a really good job ruling, you know, from what we see as well. There's also, like, you know, there's a few things with, like, the lords not, like, you know, their kind of allegiance is up in the air because they're like, Jon Snow should have stayed in the north and whatnot. But yeah, Littlefinger's trying to get his hooks in. He has a great speech about how fighting everybody always in your mind and stuff like that. And this is something that really sort of, I think this is the reason why, like, you know, people are sad at Littlefinger's death. But, you know, I'll get into that in the theories and predictions later on in the video. So yeah, when I was talking about before, the Lannister army taking High Garden and stuff like that, Olenna Tyrell meets her end at Harmless Poison that's absolutely painless, and of course she gets her last jab in like she would, you know what I mean? Like if she was ever going to go out, I'd never expect anything less. And yeah, it is one of those sort of things where, you know, I think, you know, it is sort of like sad to see the old lady go, especially like knowing that, you know, there's no Tyrells left. Like this is it, the last of the house, you know. So you know, it's a sort of, it's one of those moments where you're like, oh shit, she's going, but she gets her last job in, and it's like, you know what, that's great. I love that. I love the fact that if she had to go out, she went out like on you know, on her own terms, which I really like. We get the return of the other Starks at Winterfell as well. So Bran returns obviously sooner than Arya, but Arya gets there as well. So they're all reunited. One of the things that I found actually interesting was, I'm pretty sure, and I can't tell whether it's just the angle or whatnot, that Bran never hugged Sansa back, but he hugged Arya back when they hugged. And I don't know if I'm like reading too much into it. The thing is with Game of Thrones, and George R.R. Martin says it, it's like the devil's in the detail, you know? So I kind of do look out for the little stuff. I'm just wondering if Bran knows something that is... Because he's supposed to know everything, like, you know, well, he can say everything, like, as is. He has, like, control over something. If he knows to look for it, other than that, he just gets sporadic things. So I'm wondering if there's something about it that, you know, that is sort of telling us something, but I don't know. The Brienne and Arya duel, that was a really good one. I really loved that fucking little fight, because it showcases exactly how good Arya has actually become. That she can, you know, she can take on Brienne. Now there is like a case for, you know, was Brienne sort of underestimating Arya, because she, like, I mean, you'd never expect that from Arya if you hadn't seen like what we've seen her go through and stuff, you know. So there is that, but like she is like really coming into her own, you know. It's going to be interesting to see these characters like have to fight against the White Walkers, you know. We get the Field of Fire 2, obviously season 7, episode 4, where Dany takes Drogon and the Dothraki and fights the Lannister sort of forces in an open field, which I love the callback. I love the callback to in season 1 where Robert says only a fool would take on Dothraki in an open field, and I love the fact that it's like, it's just the like the you know, the niche little things that it's a callback to. I really like, and yeah, of course that fucking battle is unbelievable. It's so like, I love the horror aspect that they put into it when it's shown like from the perspective of Bronn. Like obviously when he's when Jaime tells him to go get the scorpion and whatnot and get on that thing, hopefully take down Drogon. You know, he gets his horse's leg gets chopped off, and now he's like on his own scrambling. I love the sort of, I think there's some sort of symbolism in the fact that his bag of gold drops and he doesn't go for it. I'm wondering if there's like a sort of change in maybe mentality for Bronn, where he's maybe a bit less, or he sees less about the materialistic kind of thing. But we'll see. I mean, he's still alive. There was you know, here's the thing. I love Bronn, and I won't lie. When he became the MVP yet again, because that's Bronn in a nutshell. Like, he's the one you want on your side in big battles, because he's always gonna, you know, he's gonna change the tide of it. But when he got on the scorpion and he hit Drogon, and then Drogon came down and lit the whole thing ablaze. After like the episode and I had time to think about it, I was thinking in my head, should Bronn have died there? Because if you think about it, that whole battle, none of any of our main characters died. Now, the great thing about that battle is that, you know, both sides, you don't want anyone to die on either side. You know, because, you know, you love Jaime at this point. Obviously, you love Bronn. They're not bad people. Of course, you probably want the Targaryens to win over the Lannisters in this regard, but you don't want you don't want Bronn and Jaime to die. And obviously, on the other side, you don't want Daenerys or Drogon to die. So it was a great sort of battle of, like, you know what I mean? You're so on edge the whole time. It's like, there's no way you have a big battle like this and no one's going to die. And then they don't. And I think this is probably one of the... This mixes in with the rest of the season for, like, people thinking that, oh, shit, like, people have got plot armor and shit. And I won't lie, after, you know, a few hours after watching episode 4 of season 7, I was thinking to myself, should Bronn have, like, gone out on that? Like, he hit Drogon. Should he have died after that? But then, now that I'm thinking, my thinking is he has to play a big role in season 8 then. There has to be something that Bronn does that is so important to the story that he wouldn't have died there, because otherwise you should have just killed him off then. Bronn is that kind of character now, where he is the enigma in the group. Like, he is the, what you would almost call like the underdog. He's not necessarily a main character, but he's a fucking MVP when you need him to be. And he's still fighting for the Lannisters as far as I'm aware. Although that, well, we don't know. Because if Jaime has actually left, I don't know if he owes any allegiance to any other... I don't know if he owes any allegiance to Cersei or what. I don't know. But it'll be interesting regardless. But yeah, continuing on with this battle, because it is such an amazing battle. There's just so much to talk about regarding it. Obviously, Tyrion was there. He was looking on. And it's that sort of... That thing of Tyrion... Because he is compassionate, and not even to, like, the people that he's... Because obviously, you know, to the people that he backs, but also his... Like, he's seeing his own house be massacred, you know? And he's standing there, and he doesn't like what he sees. He's so, like, you know, he's so sad at what he's seeing. One of the most biggest heart-dropping moments, and I'll not even say biggest, I will say the biggest heart-dropping moment I have ever witnessed in this show was Jaime facing down Drogon, like going to obviously kill Daenerys. Like, he wasn't, like, you know, he wasn't going to kill Drogon, you know, because he wouldn't be able to do that, like, by himself. But to try and end the war by killing Daenerys, that was like, what word to describe it? Like, my heart fucking sank so bit, because it had all of the elements piled up. Like, Jaime's dead, that's it, you know what I mean? Everything, like, every little detail just had it. It's like, this is it, Jaime's gone. And the thing that obviously like sealed it for me that Jaime's dying is Tyrion saying, "You idiot, you fucking idiot," you know, like, what the hell do you think you're doing? That's it, you're gone. And I had written him off at that point. I'm so glad he didn't die, because honestly I was ready to just like be done, and like I would be staring at a wall for like hours after that, just not knowing what the fuck to do with myself, because that was a big heart-dropping moment for me. One of the greatest moments of Game of Thrones for me in any single season is Jon petting Drogon. I love that fucking that is so great. Knowing that he is Lyanna and Rhaegar's son, knowing that he's a Targaryen and Drogon can sense it and smell it on Jon. Him petting Drogon, there's something so epic about it. Like, he's fucking like, he's, you know, his big fur is like flapping in the like on the cliff's wind, and it's just such an epic shot, like with the music, and it's so like, it almost brings a tear to your eye, that one. Like, it really does, just from like the emotional impact of knowing Jon's lineage and what dragons mean to Targaryens. Like, that is a big fucking deal. Drogon's like eye dilating. It's a really, really touching moment, and that's one of my favorite, just straight up like imagery and knowing what it means. Like, it's one of my favorite. So obviously in Season 7, one of the things that people didn't really like was the Arya and Sansa interaction stuff. Now, this is where I kind of believe that there was more to it. I think there's one half of it that is them two playing Littlefinger. But also the second half of it is possibly something else. When I said before about Bran not hugging Sansa and maybe he knows something that we don't yet, that maybe, like, because Arya with Faceless Man training can read people's faces and stuff, right? That's one of the things that she had learned, was like, you know, to play this the game of faces. Are you lying or not? And she can kind of tell that and pick up on it. And, you know, I'm inclined to believe that Arya isn't like, you know, she's not bullshitting here. She can read something that maybe we as the audience can't really, you know. It also could be a thing of like Sansa just on one hand getting something that she's always wanted to be growing up, to be lady, like to be a lady, you know, and be in that position. So it could just be like a side thing of that, and it might not be as big a deal as what they made out to be. But yeah, it's you know, I just thought I'd talk about it a bit anyway. Gendry returns. Oh my god, like, you have no idea like how fucking psyched I was from this. As soon as Davos says, "Oh, I have business in Flea Bottom," I was like, there has to be, like, it has to be, because that's where he was originally in Season 1. Was he was working at the smithy in Flea Bottom, and like, oh my god, like, just the hype that I had around this character, because as I've said previously, like, it's something about a Baratheon that is just so, like, it just gets me hype. Baratheons, I think it's just they're just sheer strength, and that's what they are, you know what I mean? Like, there's something like really, I just adore them. I really do. I adore the Baratheons, and having Gendry back, especially after the death of Stannis, it's like, he's the last one. He needs to be legitimized. He needs to be Gendry Baratheon. And honestly, I hope he has a big part in Season 8. I really do. Like, I want him to be like, to fucking wield his hammer into battle, like, shouting like, "Ours is the fury," and I want a Baratheon theme, and I want it to be epic, and he needs to fucking survive, because I think out of everyone, the house that I want to survive the most is, like, I want the Baratheon one to fucking survive, right? I need it to survive. I think the Starks are fine. I mean, like, the house. I think, you know, there's going to be a Stark left at the end of this. I think there's going to be a Targaryen at the end of this, and I think there's a Lannister as well. I think at least one of every house will be fine, of the main houses. I don't know about the Greyjoys though. I think they might be a bit fucked. But we'll wait and see. We get the meeting of Jon and Gendry together, and this is so great because, like I said in Season 1, the dynamic between Ned and Robert, the one thing that I want in Season 8 is for Jon and Gendry to have that relationship. Like, I need them to have that, you know? I need them to be the new Ned and Robert. Because, like, they had it right off the bat, you know? They had the same sort of banter between each other, and I need that. We had the sort of quest beyond the wall with Westeros's mightiest heroes, and obviously that ended up in the death of Thoros. I mean, you're always gonna, like, they were never all gonna come back. I'm surprised it was only one, though, to be fair. And again, like what I was saying before, like with the Field of Fire, that, you know, that plot armor is a big fucking, it seems like a big thing that keeps cropping up across season 7 about, like, how the, you know, some characters just aren't dying. So, you know, and it was just Thoros at the end of the day. So yeah, that happened. Obviously bitten by a bear. And one of the things that, as well, about, like, in that mission Beyond the Wall, the Hound really fucking fucked up on that mission, didn't he? Like, not only did he let, I know he's got that fear of fire and everything, but I mean, come on, he's your mate, help him out, you know, regardless. So yeah, he sort of allowed that to happen, and then he also threw that fucking rock, like, basically telling all the army of the dead, it's like, well, it's safe to walk across now. You know what I mean? So he fucked up like pretty badly on that mission. Of course, Daenerys comes in to rescue the crew with, like, the sort of Deus Ex Machina kind of thing. You know, like, basically, there's no other solution, they're all gonna die, here comes Daenerys to save the day. And obviously there's, like, that sort of that thing up in the air of, like, how the fuck did they manage to stay on that little island for God knows how long, while Genji ran all the way back to the wall, sent a raven all the way to Dragonstone for Dany to fly all the way back. I mean, there is that thing. I don't know the exact mileage between everything, but you've got to, I mean, as far as I can remember, there was, what, they were there maybe half a day, and then full night, and then back into the morning again, and then, I don't know, like, so they were probably there, like, a good day before they started fighting. I don't know if that's enough time or what, but yeah, I mean, that whole thing with the dragons fighting the White Walker, like, you know, the Army of the Dead, that's a fucking big deal, like, that shit happening, it was so cool to witness. And then, of course, Viserion gets hit by the fucking Night King, he goes down, he gets risen up again at the end of the episode. Jon doing a bit too much by, like, hitting these, like, you know, killing these Army of the Dead folks and whatnot, and obviously allows that to happen. And Jon is too far away to get back on the dragon before shit can happen again, so he gets, you know, he gets left behind. And then again, another Deus Ex Machina moment of Benjen Stark coming back again for, like, the third time, and then dying anyway. So yeah, there was that whole thing. So yeah, a few moments in this season, obviously, where it's like, oh yeah, of course that would happen, you know. I'm wondering if it's suffering from, like, you know, the cliched, like, story moments, like it's coming up to an end to kill people off in, like, surprising ways and stuff like that. Like, maybe it would end up being a bit more unsatisfactory now that we've gone so long with these characters and stuff. So you know, that fault of the writing, a lot of different things that can be taken from that, but yeah, Jon survives anyway. And then we get the meeting at the dragon pit, which is fucking, such a great, like, that's just a great moment. Everybody that mattered in that one place, like, I don't know, like, there wasn't anyone that didn't matter there other than Sansa, Littlefinger, and Arya over Winterfell. But other than that, like, shit, like, I was nuts seeing everyone there at one point. Like, again, back to when I said that, like, I loved the fact when Tyrion saw a dragon for the first time, he was, like, awe-inspired. But here, when Drogon showed up, that, like, but I think this was more a case of Cersei not showing, like, her fear of it, really. I think it was the idea is that she's supposed to sit there and act like, you don't scare me, kind of thing, you know. I think that was Cersei's way, you know. But in the end, that didn't really happen when they got the White out, and it charged towards Cersei, and she was like, whoa, what the fuck, you know, because that was something, like, sort of like very unexpected, whereas she was obviously expecting the dragon and whatnot. But yeah, again, that was a fucking really great moment. Like, it's great, like, watching Cersei, like, come up with everyone, and then you're looking at people gaze at all of the people that are connected to them, and, like, it's just it's mad, because it's going through, like, each of these characters, and you're like, fuck, like, this is, like, all of this setup for all of these seasons, and this is the payoff, and it's like, this is what you want, and you just, like, honestly, there's rarely a moment, I don't know if there is a moment in season 7 entirely where you're sitting there thinking, fucking hell, because it is, like, it's like the fan service season, isn't it? Like, because this is what you've been wanting the whole fucking time, like, these characters to interact, and they're finally interacting. I love the talk with Jon and Theon about like, Theon, you're a Greyjoy and a Stark. I love that. Of course, that plays into the title of the episode being Dragon and a Wolf, which ends up being Jon. Of course, he doesn't know that, so he's a Targaryen and a Stark. You know, but I really love that. It's sort of like one of those things, like, you know, I think it means more. Like, you know, we know Sansa's forgiven him and stuff like that, but I think it means so much more coming from Jon, you know, because I feel like he's like the next Ned. Like, we have that sort of imagery with Jon. I think he's sort of in line. He's like he's the new Ned in a way, you know, because. So I think it means a lot, that that scene, and also it means that, you know, like, Theon's decided, is like, right, that's it. I'm done being Reek. You know, and having to deal with all this shit. That's it. I'm going to go after Yara, you know. So yeah, I have some predictions on Theon, but I'll leave that until later on the video. So yeah, we get the Arya and Sansa, like the little trial that happens in the Winterfell, in the Winterfell throne room. And of course they play Littlefinger, and we're wondering, did it all catch up to him in the end, like, you know. But this is the thing, like, with Littlefinger, like, you know, he's been this great game player from day one, and everything that he says, you'd feel like he would take his own advice, and to our knowledge, he hasn't really been doing that with Sansa. You know, he's been giving up his whole game plan, which is something that Littlefinger is not known for. So again, I will talk about that in the theories and predictions. Jaime finally seeing Cersei for what she is. This was again like the next moment of season 7 where my heart dropped again, because it was revolving around Jaime, and I was like, right, well, this is it then. If he didn't die at the fucking Field of Fire with Drogon, then this is it. This is where he's dying then. And oh god, like, fucking Game of Thrones, man. They've basically they've set it up so that everybody viewing it expects something to happen, and now they're not doing it. It's like, you know, they've subverted expectation of, like, oh, you don't kill off your main characters, and then they do it anyway with Ned, and then with the Red Wedding, and then with Oberyn, and you're like, alright, I get it, right? I get it. You kill off fucking main characters. I'll be ready next time, and I'll know when it's coming, and then when you think it's coming, it doesn't. They fuck with you so much, and honestly, I mean, the thing is that they can get away with it in season 7. I don't think they can get away with it in season 8. I think this is where consequences are at the highest, because it's the end of the show. So I think just as stories go, we're going to see the biggest main character kill count of the entire show. Sam arrives at Winterfell, and we get Bran and Sam talking together, the two people that have the knowledge surrounding Jon's lineage and everything like that. And then we finally get Bran looking at Rhaegar and Lyanna's marriage. It's a big fucking scene. Again, like I said, season 6 onwards, Bran's stuff actually becomes like, whoa, like big deal stuff. You know what I mean? It's not the Worgen that matters or anything like that. It's his fucking visions of what happened, the information that people need to know. So yeah, that's a very fucking big deal. And then obviously paired with that, you get, like, you know, Bran talking about Rhaegar and Lyanna, but then it's paired with Jon and Daenerys. Jon ending up obviously being the a full-on Targaryen. He is Jon, or technically, I guess, Aegon Targaryen. Though I hope he keeps the name Jon. I think just as a respect thing to Ned, but also like the fact that that's what he's grown up with. I don't know why he would like use Aegon from now on. I get that if he wants to use Targaryen, that's fair enough, but, you know, keep Jon. Keep Jon. And then we finish off the last season of the Night King on the top of Viserion, breaking down the wall with what I assume is like blue plasma fucking mixture of fire. It doesn't look like straight fire to me, like even blue fire. It looks like an energy fucking beam, like a plasma fuck. I don't even know how to describe it. It's not ice, because why would ice bring down an ice wall? You know, so it's fucking, that's crazy. Yeah. And they're making their way through. So I can only expect that the beginning of next episode will, I don't know where it'll start. I'm almost tempted to think like maybe it's like going to kick off straight away. With only 6 episodes, I feel like they need to just pick up the pace like real quick. I know they picked it up like season 7. They picked up the pace because people were like crossing like massive differences, like distances in like little time, so I can only imagine like the pace will either stay the same or it'll be even quicker. So yeah, but that is my overview of all of the different seasons of Game of Thrones. It took a fucking while to get through them, but yeah, it's nice getting refreshed immediately before, because now I know like everything going in. You know what I mean? I'm completely fresh. I know what I'm getting into now, and then now it's just about being emotionally prepared for what the fuck is about to happen. So with that out of the way, it's time to get on to the next section. Okay, so I've gone through all of the seasons and given you my thoughts and opinions on the important information and stuff that came out of those seasons and whatnot, but now I'm going to rank all of the seasons from worst to best. I'm not going to talk a lot about them because, you know, I feel like I've given you my opinion on, you know, each of the seasons and whatnot. I'll give a little bit, but yeah, it's just in my personal opinion what I think the worst season to the best season was. And just, you know, remember, just because I put certain seasons above any other, that I think that the seasons are bad. I don't think there's a bad season of the show. I think that you know, there's one season in particular that a lot of it I didn't care about, but other than that, like, you know, like the seasons were great, like start to finish. So yeah. So number 7, the worst season in my opinion, season 5. I don't think this is a surprise to anybody. It's the season with Dawn and all that kind of stuff, which we already know is not great. Tyrion at this point having pretty, like, not very much to do from this point out. I feel like his best seasons were 2 to 4. And at this point, I felt like the Arya stuff started to drag a little bit. With, like, I felt like she wasn't getting the training I wanted to see with the Faceless Men and stuff like that. And obviously, this was the Sparrow stuff. Like I said, I loved everything with Cersei, and I liked listening to the High Sparrow. But everything other than that, the Sparrow storyline dragged as well. So season 5 is like the bottom of the pile for you know, the worst season I think of Game of Thrones. It did have Hardhome though, it's just one of the best episodes, isn't it? So fair dues, fair dues. But yeah, from this point on, every season could be like interchangeable for the best season for completely different reasons. After going through it again, I've put number 6, season 7. Now the reason for this is because I feel like, obviously, maybe due to the writing, because obviously they don't have the books to go from at this point, they just have little outlines of where the characters are going to end up. Just make them get to that point, you know. So, you know, it was a fan service season, and like I said before, I don't think like there's rarely a moment in season 7 where I wasn't just awestruck by the stuff that was happening, because we'd been waiting for it for so long. But I don't want to say that they're better than the other seasons, because writing wise, I'm not sure they are. I just think because there's a lot of fan service stuff that's the reason why it's so exciting, and not particularly like the writing of it, you know. So season 7's number 6. Number 5, season 1, and even though I said, like, you know, I don't want to put season 1 so low on my list, because I fucking love this season. It's with Ned and Robert, and, you know, like, it's a fucking amazing season. It really is. But I think that just shows the level of, like, of all of Game of Thrones. Like, it's that high up that season 1 is 5 for me. You know, I hate putting it there, but I can't ignore the other stuff. And like I said, like, these are things that, like, these seasons, aside from season 5 will always be the lowest. Like, it always will be. It'll not be all that great. But everything 6, like, you know, seasons 1, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7, I feel like can, like, be interchangeable for different reasons. You know, season 1 had that pure intrigue throughout. The setup I thought was massively done, and it feel like it's a much better season on the second time through, knowing what comes up. Number 4 was season 3. I thought that, again, just a fucking solid season. The infamous season with the Red Wedding. I said before how, like, season 3 and 2 were kind of, like, interchangeable. Like, almost like they had the same kind of feeling. So I thought it was an extension of which. But I still feel like number 2 was better than 3. And, you know, I just felt like it was just on a, you know, it was coming off what had just happened in season 1, and I felt like because the landscape was, like, to change that much, everything that was happening was so exciting, you know. Number 3, season 6. I mean, I had to put season 6 up higher. I was debating on where the fuck to put season 6. I was like, oh, season 1's all the way down in 5th, and I was like, you know. But then I just decided that I can't not put season 6 on, like, up there into my top 3, because it has so much game-changing revelations in that season. And like some of the things from season 6 are the things I remember more. Like I remember so many scenes from season 6, like more so than any other season. So I had to put it like up that high. Number 2, season 2. I had to put this on here because I just feel like this is like, just storytelling wise, I feel like this was the best written season. I can't fault like anything in this season at all. Everything I was watching was absolutely just, you know, I was glued to the screen for the whole season. So yes, season 2 gets second place, and number 1 for me is season 4. You know, I had such a fucking fun time watching this season. Like it just, I remember. Like I remember this season so vividly in my mind, and I don't know why, because I don't know what I like. You know, to point out like what was different. I think what I was like saying before when I was talking, like going through my overview of season 4, was the different feeling it had. You know, season 2 and 3 kind of had that, like that sort of arc with Rob and all of that kind of stuff. It almost had the same kind of feeling. 4 had such a different sort of intrigue, and having Tyrion in such a vulnerable place, and you know, and then with Oberyn as well. Like I said, Oberyn and Tyrion fucking carried that season like on the fucking shoulders. You know, and there was so fucking many moments. I think it's Arya's best season, season 4. You know, it's such tension throughout. The Joffrey death, like everything in that season, I felt was so impactful. And I remember that season so fondly. So season 4 gets top spot for me. But yeah, that is my seasons ranked from worst to best. Again, like, you know, it's just like my opinion based on now. Like at any point other than season 5, like, you know, that can change and things can change around, you know, just like depending on like what I'm feeling, because they are all that great. So yeah, so give me your you know, your rankings down below for which season you think is the worst to best. Okay, my top 10 favourite characters in Game of Thrones. Okay, just to let you know that this list will contain both dead and alive characters. It's not exclusive to one or the other. This is going to contain every, like, you know, I'm going to have the list of every single character in Game of Thrones that has ever been, regardless of if they're alive or dead. So yeah, it's just my personal opinion. Obviously, you don't have to agree with it or the reasons why. But, you know, you can let me know your favourite characters in the comments below, and let me know why you like those characters so much. So yeah, let's get started. So number 10, Bronn. I did a lot of thinking about this, and this is obviously a bit more, I feel like, harder to choose than ranking the seasons, just because there's so many characters to choose from, and each, like, you know, there's so many great characters as well. But I could not bring myself to not have Bronn on this list. Compared to the other characters, he's relatively more background than, you know, the other ones on my list. But I think that the big strength of Game of Thrones is actually the strength of the side characters, like how good the you know, the side characters actually are. Because whilst the main characters do, you know, push the story forward and you know, they carry the story, I feel like the side characters do such a good job of keeping the, you know, keeping the show on the right track. I feel like, you know, because there are so many characters in Game of Thrones, obviously not everyone gets a mainstay spot, so you need, like, you know, it's almost like the side characters themselves almost have to live up to like a main role just to keep the story, to keep the story correct and on the right track. Compared to the others, he is actually quite simple and easy to understand. You know, he likes the simple pleasures in life, and he's very upfront about it as well. I think he's one of the most honest characters in the show, to be honest. And it's nice to really have a character on the show that you can trust will be honest in every situation that he's put in. But yeah, aside from like his obvious quips and one-liners, the guy's a fucking MVP. I've said it before, like, numerous times, that, you know, he's the guy you want on your side in the big battles. He was at Blackwater. He's the one that fired the arrow that caused the wildfire explosion. He's the one that put the fucking bolt into Drogon that caused him to get grounded. He's just a big fucking... He's essentially like an unknown with a high skill potential. Like, he is such an underdog in season 8, I feel like, and I feel like because he's still alive, he has a lot to, like, there's still a big there's something big that he needs to be a part of. That, you know, I mean, that's the reason he was kept alive. I think he's going to play a big role in season 8. Number 9, Tywin Lannister. I surely don't have to tell you the reason why Tywin is on my list. I mean, Charles Dance, right? What can I say? The guy's just a phenomenal actor, Shakespearean trained. His ability to just command respect and presence. You know, I'm pretty sure you've heard all this before in like maybe other top 10s or whatever, or, you know, like Tywin Lannister sort of character retrospectives and stuff. But I just think out of every character like on the show that he is the most politically sound. I think he oozes authority, he can plan on the fly and able to turn everything to his advantage in a way. His debut scene, obviously butchering and skinning the stag, the fact that he was able to pull that off as an actor, like actually doing that whilst acting out a scene, and with such fucking like such presence. You know, it's basically the word that people use to describe not just Tywin but just Charles Dance. You know, and I think he was perfect casting for the role of Tywin. A really interesting character because he's all about family and family legacy, yet in the end that is what his, not just his life but his death revolved around. You know, the family and legacy, and you know, his lack of loving for a family member, Tyrion, is what got him killed in the end. But yeah, just a great character all around. Number 8, Oberyn Martell. Now, fucking hell, yes, you've heard my love for this guy when I was doing the overview in season 4. But fuck's sake, if there was one character I could bring back from the dead, it would be this man. I talked about like Tywin's debut scene, but Oberyn's is the best entrance of any character in the show, I feel like. You know, he's basically singing the Lannister theme, the theme that like of the house that he hates, and he just has this sort of very like quiet rage, very solemn tone, and very tense as well. Like I was just immediately on board from the guy, being like a free spirit. Like there was just nobody else like him on the show. And to that end, that's where Dawn's storyline ended with Oberyn. As soon as he died, that was it. There was nothing else after that in Dawn that was just, it just wasn't good after that. For a character like with so much hatred for Lannisters and like revenge on his mind, he was so gentle, like cool, calm and collected, until it obviously really mattered in the end with his fight against the Mountain. The thing is, because there was moments where he assured Cersei that Myrcella was happy and safe in Dawn, and then told Tyrion like how he didn't see him as a monster and ended up becoming his champion. Like all of these moments where he was able to be just a very compassionate and nice person, and to Lannisters as well, like the family that he knows did this horrible atrocity to his family. And you know, I think it just speaks volumes that this guy is on my list, and on the list of many people actually, considering the fact he only had 8 episodes. So yeah, Oberyn Martell gets in there at number 8. Number 7, Davos Seaworth. Davos is a great moral replacement for Ned. He is so intriguing because he plays a sort of conscience character to Stannis, and the counterpart to Melisandre throughout that whole ordeal with them two sort of backing Stannis. And I'm not going to lie, there is an attachment to Davos because of his accent. The actor Liam Cunningham is Irish, I think, but for Davos he puts on like a sort like this Geordie accent. He calls it a flea bottom accent, but it's you know, it's not too dissimilar to my accent really. You know, if I was to go like really like into my accent, you would definitely hear it. Like, you may be able to hear it right now, but yeah, he's. I didn't just throw him on this list for that. You know, he has possibly the best acting scene on the whole show alongside Tyrion's trial, where he confronts Melisandre about burning Shireen alive. And I just feel like he is the perfect right-hand man to have. You know, he is loyal and honourable to a T, and I think he does replace Ned in that light. And yeah, I really like Davos, so he fits in there at number 7. Number 6, Cersei Lannister, the woman who has been at the heart of everything, and technically in the heart of Westeros and King's Landing, because she's been there the whole fucking time. But yeah, the reason Cersei's made my list comes down to mostly Lena Headey's performance. I think she captures the sort of self-absorbed, sociopathic, even psychopathic tendencies that Cersei clearly has. She is so certain like that the world revolves around her that even if she knows somebody is telling the truth, you know, but goes against what she wants or feels, she'll not hear it. Or just straight up refuse. She's such a key character in the show that, like, you know, without her, it's almost like the show would actually feel empty if she wasn't in it. She plays a necessary sort of evil as well, which I don't think, you know, there's characters in there that obviously do as well, but I think that, you know, I think the reason she was always going to be on my list is because she's not just that one-note character that you almost expected her to be, and I think that really changed for me. Like in season 5, when they actually managed to make us feel sympathetic towards her, about, like, you know, for someone previously thought undeserving of any sympathy whatsoever, you know, and this continued into the start of season 6 when she learns about the death of her daughter Marcella as well, and like sort of that, you know, that sympathy you have for her as a mother, you know, and the fact that they managed to do that with this character is a hell of a thing to accomplish. So yeah, Cersei, she's in there at number 6. Number 5, Ned Stark, the OG. Ned is, I mean, I think it's safe to say he's the soul of the show. He really is. He was only in 1 season, and yet even 7 seasons after his death, it all comes back to Ned. It all comes back to Eddard Stark. You know, Sean Bean, the man, the myth, the legend. Also, like, alongside Peter Dinklage as well, like the only actors that were immediately cast to play the role. So, you know, Sean Bean, he was cast straight off the bat. There was no need to bring in or like audition other people for that role. It was always going to be Sean Bean, and also, yeah, Peter Dinklage as well. But it's obvious why. Because he was going to die. That's why he was brought in. No, because he's fucking incredible. The man plays like he plays a fantastic, like a fantasy medieval role like nobody else. He really does. I mean, that was pretty much obvious with him in Lord of the Rings with Boromir and stuff, but he does have that sort of that sort of old, like, medieval feel. He really does, and he pulls it off fantastically. He really, like, led this show into the spotlight and laid the foundation for the others to sort of inherit in the later seasons. And big ups to Mark Addy as well for his portrayal of Robert Baratheon. I think that partnership, like, you know, with those two was crucial to Game of Thrones' success, and I think if they hadn't have gotten that right, I don't think it would have been the show that it is today. And the thing is, the wake that was left from Ned's death is still rippling to this day. I mean, how many characters in, you know, in media, in any story, can you say left such a lasting impression like Ned Stark has in Game of Thrones? I don't think you can name many. So yeah, God bless you, Sean Bean. Number 4, Jon Snow. Oh, Ned would be proud. He really would be. I had to put Jon Snow on here, if not only for his ability to sword fight. I mean, his choreography is by far, like, the best in the show. Out of every character, he really nails all that good stuff. And I can't take my eyes off it every time he is fighting, because it just has this, like, it has this such, like, real... It just seems real when he fights, you know? And I think it's easy in a fantasy sort of story for like, you know, fights to play out and not seem like they are real, but Jon always crushes it every time. He's essentially like the protagonist of the show that doesn't truly have one, and because everything is so grey, he sort of lives in that sort of spectrum where he is the hero of the show, and because of his, like, perspective up north, he knows, like, all of the political bullshit is a waste of time, and he understands what the real threat is. It's almost like he's living in a different show at some points. It really does. Like, he's sort of like the sole, like, you know, he is the sole hero character, like, fighting off against, like, the evil zombies that are marching upon the wall. And I love the fact that he doesn't seek to lead. Like, he never wanted leadership, but people, you know, people instinctively follow Jon as almost like a natural born leader of men. It just makes him an honest hero, and reluctant to be one, yet he was the commander we turned to when the night was darkest. He really was. He is a hero in a show that doesn't really seem like it needs one, but I think, you know, it's like he is really grown into his own, you know, and he is more Ned Stark now than ever before, and I fucking love it. So yeah, Jon Snow gets 4th place. Number 3, Tyrion Lannister. Tyrion was always going to make my top 3. I was flip-flopping back and forth with him between 2nd and 3rd. mainly because of his lack of, I feel like, much to do in seasons 5 and 6. I feel like he was off the throttle a bit. Like I said before, seasons 2 to 4, Tyrion, unbelievable. Like, he was my favorite character in those seasons, and I decided with third place, just because, yeah, I feel like he did like, you know, he left his foot off. Like, they didn't have like much for him to do, and you know, I've seen what they are doing with him in the books, and like, because they haven't introduced a lot of those things in the show, it just means that he hasn't got like the motivations that he does in the books, and therefore he doesn't have a lot to do. But I mean, come on, it's fucking Tyrion Lannister. I mean, I don't need to explain why he's in my top 3. If you followed along with my other reactions and my other videos and stuff, you'd know that I adore smart and clever characters, characters that use their head, and no character quite emanates that like Tyrion does, really, does it? You know what I mean? He is the smart one. The reason why he uses his head is because he was born a dwarf, and you know, he's been ostracized for it, but he's not physically able, so he uses his head. And I mean, we all love Tyrion. He always had a real unique perspective and place in the story as well, being in a family that is so highly thought of, you know, the Lannisters, a house of legacy, and yet as an individual he was downtrodden, and being in such a high position yet thought of so little is such an interesting perspective from him. He's seen as a monster, and yet in spite of that he is one of the most compassionate characters in Game of Thrones, which is a nice change to like the harsh nature of others that surround him and everywhere else in the story. So yeah, Tyrion, he gets third. Number 2. So I'm wondering if you guys know who my top 2 characters are going to be. So number 2 is Littlefinger, Peter Baelish. I've mentioned before that when I think about who the greatest players are, like of Game of Thrones, Littlefinger tops my list, and I think he will top like anybody's list in that regard, like the players of the Game of Thrones. He's the most crafty and cunning player, using chaos to climb and advance his position. He's the bigger mover like of pieces, and he did it all on his own. Like, he was born, you know what I mean, like part of no house, like like he's basically no one, and he's risen to the top on his own merit. He knows what buttons to push at exactly what time, saying all the right things, and I wholeheartedly hope that he is revealed to be alive in season 8. He has the most quotable lines in the show as well, Littlefinger. He has the best speeches, he really does, and I really love the way he thinks, and I'm hoping that he is brought back in season 8, because I feel like it would do it just like an injustice to the character to kill him off because he was played at his own game. You know, he was always proud of the fact that he never gave away his game plan, and I feel like he was doing all of that with Sansa, and if he died because of it, that would be an injustice. I'd like to think that he was playing her all along as well. But yeah, Littlefinger gets in at number 2. And number 1, my favourite character of Game of Thrones as of right now, is Jaime Lannister. To be honest, I mean, I would think a lot of people's favourite character would be Jaime Lannister. This character was just so easy to judge in the first episode, like the first season. But, you know, you begin to understand that after he is humbled, not just by losing the hand, but gradually, you know, a year spent as a prisoner, his relationship with Brienne, he's immediately in our bad books from the beginning, and, you know, he's doing this whole incestual thing with Cersei, throws Bran from a fucking window, you know what I mean? This shit is like, you know, it's irredeemable. And yet from season 3 onwards, you begin to understand his motivations and his reasons for the actions, you know, that he takes. And in later seasons, he remains firmly on Cersei's side, even though she treats him terribly, and all the while witnessing like the horrendous acts that she inflicts on others. You know, he says lines like, "We can't choose who we love." You know, finally, like in season 7, it all comes to a head, and he's had enough, and he actually leaves her, and it's a big fucking moment, because this whole time he has shown that, you know, he cares for Cersei above all others, and he leaves her, and I think the interesting thing is that Jaime, like, he crawled into my number 1 spot without me really knowing. You know, I think when you're watching a show, I think, you know, with Tyrion, it's almost like obvious. Like, he's such a great character to watch, like, that you're just like, yeah, like, he's obviously like my favorite character. And he was in seasons 2 to 4. But Jamie crawled into my number 1 without me knowing, and it was in season 7. And I said it in my overview of season 7, but it was when he charged at Daenerys, and me thinking that whole way that this is it, he's going to die. I did not realise how much I cared for the guy. I did not realise how much I didn't want him to die, and that was a moment of the show. Like that is something that I have never gotten from any other part of that show. Like that, like I can't remember a time even watching like any show, not even just Game of Thrones, but a time where something snuck up on me and I didn't realize how much I didn't want a character to die. Like that was a big fucking moment for me. Like I told you before, my heart dropped more so in this moment than any other moment in the show, and I realized how much I didn't want him to die, and it only just confirmed that at the end of season 7 when he calls Cersei's bluff and he walks out and he's like, no, I'm going to honour my pledge and I'm going to go up north and fight. So yeah, Jaime Lannister, he snuck into my number 1 spot in season 7 because I understand all of his motivations. He has the best character arc in the show, bar none. I feel like from where he started to where he is now, it's such a it's just a stark contrast, forgive the pun. And you know, I just really admire the guy, and you know, I think the actor as well is fantastic. You know, especially he's from Denmark, you know, but he pulls it off so well. So yeah, that is my top 10 favorite characters. Again, let me know yours in the comments below. Okay, so the final section of this video is going to be basically outlining some theories and predictions for the upcoming season, the last season. So we're going to start off with the main one, the one that I really, really hope comes true, which is that Littlefinger is actually alive. So a lot of this comes from Neo's and the Paradox Analyzers videos on this topic. So, you know, I'll give a link down to their video there down in the description, because it's a really interesting watch, the little details that they do pick up on, and I'll go through like some of them like right now. So a lot of what George R.R. Martin likes to say is that the devil's in the detail, and I've always found that with Littlefinger, because he is such a prominent figure in Game of Thrones, he's the one that sort of outlines a lot of his plan. And the way that he sort of thinks is more apparent to the viewer, more so than giving his plan out to other characters in the show. Now, I don't know if it will be in the video before, but one of the things that I did mention, I may have edited it out, I may not have, but I feel like with Littlefinger sort of giving his plan away to Sansa for a lot of the series, it just doesn't really fit well with Littlefinger's character. I'm more of the idea that Littlefinger is playing Sansa as well, and that he is giving her like false information about what Littlefinger truly wants. So with the devil in the detail, it's especially with Littlefinger, I feel like the detail is like very, very minute. So minute in fact that you would never be able to pick up on all this stuff unless you really, really look into it. For instance, with Cat's Paw, the Valyrian steel dagger, there's only one in existence. I mean, that is obviously from Littlefinger's mouth, but I'm inclined to believe him on this one. This is something that really goes hand in hand with, if you recall back in season 1 when Viserys was still alive, one of Daenerys' handmaidens talks to Viserys about things that she has actually seen, because she has seen a lot. One is she has seen a man change his face like a man changes clothes, so that is obviously in relation to faceless men. A pirate who wore his weight in gold, I believe that would be Salladhor Saan, who we've met and actually had a decent amount of time with for a background character. And if you remember, Salladhor Saan actually does visit whorehouses and stuff. If we remember, Littlefinger has this thing about using whorehouses as a way of gaining knowledge. For in his mind, knowledge is power. And then a man from Ashai with a dagger made of real dragon glass. Now, the thing that is interesting is the fact that she points out dragon glass. Now, it's obvious, we know that dragon glass and Valyrian steel have the same properties. We know that Cat's Paw is a Valyrian steel dagger. It's not a dragonglass dagger. However, it's interesting to note that maybe somebody who is more common, a handmaiden, may not know the differences, and if they do, you know, they are very similar in regards to each other. That, you know, it's not too far out of the realm of possibility to assume that it is that same dagger and Littlefinger that she is talking about. There is also the loose end that hasn't been cleared up in regards to Bran. So if you remember, Littlefinger gives Cat's Paw to Bran, and then later Sansa asks, why would he give, like, why would Littlefinger have given his dagger to you? He wouldn't. He would only give something if he knows he was getting anything back. And there was nothing given back to Littlefinger. He was obviously aware that at some point Arya had got a hold of it because he witnessed the duel between Brienne and Arya. I mean, you know, he was a bit away. I'm not sure. I mean, but the thing is with Valyrian steel, and especially that dagger, is it sticks out. It's a sore thumb. I feel like Littlefinger would have known at this point, and we've been with Littlefinger since like pretty much the very beginning, so we know that he is a smart guy. I just don't see how in any way he would want to stick around in Winterfell after all of this. Like, you know, nobody likes him in this place. It's also like important to know that he only wields daggers, and daggers are relatively known as assassins' weapons. But of course, assassins aren't only known to use daggers as their weapons of choice. Also poison, which is a relation to the Faceless Men, who also use poison, which, if we remember back to Season 4, he conspired with Olenna to use poison to kill Joffrey Baratheon. His whole character revolves around others not knowing who he is or what he plans to do next, and yet he gives seemingly his plan over to Varys in the Chaos is a Ladder speech, hinting that he wants the Iron Throne, and then later on basically tells Sansa everything that he plans to do, and lays it all out on the table, which is something that to me Littlefinger isn't known to do. If we recall back to Season 1, when Littlefinger was talking with Ned, and there's that whole thing about who to trust and whatnot, that, you know, the smartest thing Ned had done was not trusting Littlefinger and everything like that, he talks to Sansa in Season 4, I believe, just after Joffrey's death, about it might have been a completely different time, I can't remember, but everyone in King's Landing is a liar. Now, are we to believe that Littlefinger, you know, himself is not a liar when it comes to Sansa? You know what I mean? That he's not upfront? Because I would believe that he would be playing the same game with Sansa that he did with Ned. Remember, he has only ever loved one woman, and that was Catelyn Stark, and she is dead. I don't think at any point he ever had any real feelings for Sansa at all. I think he was just playing that game. He doesn't want the Iron Throne, like he tells Sansa. He had this conversation with Roose Bolton about you know, the last time the North and the Vale allied with each other, it brought down the greatest dynasty the world had ever seen. He wants to change the system. He wants to change the system by causing chaos and basically breaking the whole thing down. There's an interesting similarity really to Daenerys, because she makes the same point with Tyrion, that, you know, she wants to break the wheel and change the system. So it's interesting how two characters that seemingly are so, like, you know, worlds apart, that they kind of want the same thing and they're kind of going about it like different ways. I think it's interesting to note that, you know, during Season 7 that he is talking to some unknown people, some people that we haven't seen before, and we don't get to hear their conversations. You know, there's like little nods and things to things happening in the background that you may not notice, you know, like little signals here and there, and that it's possible that he faked his death by having the Faceless Men take his place. If you don't know Baelish's own sigil, he created his own sigil, which is the Mockingbird, which is known for mimicking other birds and things like that. So, you know, the whole Mockingbird thing plays into his role of mimicking other things, and by extension the Faceless Men as well, so there is that connection. The thing is with houses across Westeros is that they take their sigils like almost like very seriously and to heart. You know, the Starks see themselves as wolves, the Lannisters see themselves as lions, Targaryens, dragons, so it's not out of the realm of possibility that, you know, Baelish, he sees himself as a mockingbird, you know, and you know, he would be smart enough to know exactly what a mockingbird does. It's very important to note as well concerning all of this that Baelish is technically a foreigner in Westeros, and that the only family he ever talks about is that his grandfather was actually from Braavos. Now we know that the Faceless Men are also in Braavos, so there is that slight connection there. And not only is it the Faceless Men that reside in Bravos, but also the Iron Bank. Back in Season 1, he was obviously the Master of Coin. And there's this whole thing of, like, basically Ned saying, are you telling me the Crown is 3 million in debt? He's saying it's 6 million in debt. With Baelish being the Master of Coin, he was able to use all of that to his advantage. He gives out a lot of expensive presents. He pays people very well. Where's he gotten all of this money from? And, you know, by using sort of Robert's style of leadership, like his kingly way of not really giving a fuck, he was able to just smoothly, you know, take basically what he needed and use it as he saw fit. So yeah, everything that I outlined there, a lot of reasons as to why Littlefinger wouldn't be dead, and I pray that this is the one theory that actually comes true in Season 8, and it does turn out that Littlefinger isn't dead, because if that is the case, then I feel like it is the most unjustly way for a character's death, you know, in the entire show, from start to finish. It's a bad way for Littlefinger to go, because I feel like he deserved to go out being what he says that he is, and what the audience knows what he is, and that is the biggest player of the game, or one of the biggest players of the game. And you know, for a long time, him giving Sansa like all of these reasons as to why, you know, why it just doesn't go with Littlefinger's character to give away his game plan. So, you know, I truly hope that he is back in Season 8, and if not, I will be very disappointed. But you know, we don't know how things are going to play out. We'll just have to wait and see. The second theory is Tyrion to betray Daenerys. Now, I can see this going both ways. I could see it possibly happening, and it's not, if it does happen, it's not malicious, because it's not within Tyrion's character to betray Daenerys in a malicious way. I mean, he's never been that throughout the entire show, so why would he immediately do this in the last season of the show? But this all basically stems from Tyrion's concerned look when Jon and Daenerys were, you know, going at it at the end of Season 7. And of course, this is furthered by us not knowing what took place, what was said between Tyrion and Cersei. You know, we got half of the meeting between those two. We didn't get what was said in the last half. So, you know, you can only assume that that is going to come back later in some way, some form or fashion. I think basically what it comes down to is Tyrion's concerned look, knowing that, you know, Jon and Daenerys are getting it on, which would possibly result in a baby. Now, of course, the one thing that we did hear between Tyrion and Cersei is that Tyrion's love for Cersei's children. In the end, you know, she had none left, but he did learn that she is pregnant again. So, I mean, did he make a deal for this child, this Cersei's child, to actually end up being the next successor, possibly? Maybe something along those lines. Also, the fact that Jaime has left Cersei and he is heading north now. Now, he has, you know, as of right now, Jon and Dany and all of that, you know what I mean, they, you know, he's been on the opposite side of the war, so it's, depending on what happens, Jaime could end up jailed, he could end up almost being, you know, he may end up being put to death, and then you have this whole thing where Tyrion can make it up to Jaime by setting him free, like the opposite happening in Season 4. So, you know, like I said, like little sort of like these kind of things that are betrayals, but they're not, like, you know, they're not incredibly malicious. And when we talk about prophecy as well, like if we go back to the House of the Undying, where Daenerys had like a lot of like all of these visions given to her and stuff, and what like was prophesied to happen, there was one thing I believe was in the books where like she is said to be betrayed 3 times. One was for blood, one was for gold, and then one was for love. Blood was the witch who was supposed to have saved like Khal Drogo and whatnot, and her son. For gold, which was Jorah and that whole thing, getting a pardon back, you know, to Westeros, and then one for love, which could maybe be Tyrion's love for his family. So, you know, there is that. and you know, we've yet to see a third betrayal really. So you know, this could be something that ends up happening in the last season. Of course, this is coupled with how he has struggled in season 7, about how like his plans have fallen short and stuff. And I've mentioned about how he has compassion, and even for his enemies, and not like even more so in this one, because it's literally like his enemies are his own house and their army. So you know, I do think that, you know, that there is something whirring in his head and maybe weighing up, you know, the fact of, you know, making the world a better place, and, you know, and also, you know, for his family, and maybe more so his family. We do, like, you know, from season 1 he has said, you know that I love my family. Tyrion does love his family. He does, you know, regardless of how, you know, his family have treated him and everything like that, he does actually like share the love for his family. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not I think it's going to happen. Like I said, if it does happen, it's not going to be anything malicious, you know, but yeah, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. So on to a little prediction for season 8. This involves Melisandre, and the fact that she said she's going back to Volantis. Now, if you remember the last time we saw her, she was talking to Varys about saying that, you know, she's going to have to come back and die in this strange country, as are you. So, you know, I believe, I don't think there was much, I don't know, I personally see it as, you know, she has to come back into the show, whether it's, you know, the last episode or whatever. I feel like maybe she has to come back at some point. We'll see how that sort of pans out, but I think her going back to Volantis, you know, it's the city-state that has the biggest red temple in all of Essos. It's also the home of the Fiery Hand, which, if I believe, has 1,000 religious warriors fighting for the Lord of Light. So I'm wondering if that is her plan, is to go to Volantis and seek out the head priestess. I can't, what's her name? I can't remember her name, but I think that maybe her plan is to go there and try and get these warriors to come over to Westeros to actually help Dany fight the in the Great War. Because, you know, that would be a great sort of battle, with them being a member, like, you know, members of the Lord of Light to fight their enemy. You know, it would make sense, I think. Kinvara, that was the head priestess's name. Okay, so if we remember, she actually had a talk with Tyrion and Varys, and obviously Varys doesn't like all of this like magic stuff, but Kinvara actually did, you know, basically confront Varys with that whole like ordeal that took place, and basically said something along the lines of, do you remember what you heard in the flames and whatnot? And we weren't told exactly what he heard. So I'm wondering if she was to come back to Westeros with Melisandre and possibly the Fiery Hand, if they meet again, and then we actually do find out and it's revealed what was said in the fire and what Varys knows that we don't. Because I do find it a bit coincidental that, you know, Melisandre, even though she is, like, you know, one of very few like prophets, like, you know, prophets, like able to like see visions and stuff like that, that it was her that told Varys that he needs to die in this strange country. So I'm wondering if it's something, you know, it's close to them maybe, but we'll have to wait and see. And this obviously relates to Azor Ahai, which I'll get into more in a second, but, you know, that the idea that she needs to come back, if you know about Azor Ahai, you know, it's the guy prophesied to save the world with a flaming sword, but in order to get the flaming sword, it's said that the sword needs to be, it needs to essentially stick a loved one or something like that, or it needs to be pulled out of a woman. Now, you know, I wouldn't exactly call Melisandre like basically a loved one for anybody in the show, but maybe, you know, it could be a thing of like, that's what her death, like that's what she thinks she needs to do, like her death is going to make the fiery sword. But, you know, we don't know, but that's just a little prediction, like her coming back in one way, whether it's with the Fiery Hand or Kinvara. I feel like she does need to come back in some way, and I feel like that makes the most sense to me. So yeah, we get on to the last little thing, the last sort of prediction slash theory that I want to cover, and that is R'hllor, obviously the Lord of Light, and Azor Ahai. So, okay, there's a lot of shit, you know, when it comes to the Lord of Light. Like, there's a lot of things to like sort of delve into and things like that, but I'll try and keep it as short and brief as possible whilst giving you like all my thoughts and predictions on it. So yeah, as I've said before, I think there are only two religions in Game of Thrones that actually have any real significance in the story, and that is obviously the Lord of Light and the Old Gods, because I feel like that's the kind of stuff that things are happening around, like there's actual, you know, physical evidence of that kind of shit happening within those two sort of religions. So that Craster in the early seasons, he's, you know, considered himself a godly man, and who would he consider to be his gods? Because, you know, he offers his own sons to the White Walkers and things like that. If he considers the White Walkers and things like that to be gods, or does he know more than he's letting on, and that this is a product of the old gods? We don't know, but he does consider himself a godly man, so that's an interesting little part of this as well. There isn't any real confirmation as to where the religion of like the Lord of Light and stuff actually started, but I do believe it probably has some significance in Ashai. So that's the Shadowlands. That's basically a place where the land is like covered in shadow. It's real, like a very mysterious place. And I only really say this because I feel like it relates to Melisandre's shadow baby that she had, you know, the actual thing being of shadow. And it is quite interesting and sort of ironic that the Lord of Light would stem from a place that is basically covered in darkness and shadow. There is also the thing with the shadow as well. Now, I'm actually sort of skeptical now. I did used to think that, you know, back to like Littlefinger and stuff, that the cat's paw, the dagger, because it is such a iconic shape, there is no dagger that looks like this. It's obviously got those like grooves in the blade. That the shadow baby that kills Renly, I thought that the dagger that was actually sort of mimicked there was fucking tinfoil hat, Littlefinger, Mockingbird, that the blade that was actually being used was cat's paw, because the grooves that come out the front of Renly's body actually have grooves. Now, because the fact that you can't really see the color of the blood in relation to the blade, it could be just the sort of like the strands of blood that are coming off that make it look like it's that shape. But I almost want to believe that it is, because you know, this knife and dagger, like this has been around, and it does crop up like at certain times. Like I believe that was the knife that was used to slit Catelyn Stark's throat, and also it was obviously the same one that was used to try and assassinate Bran. So it does appear, you know, like, you know, in these kind of places. And again, like, it could just be the fact that, you know, these scenes are like quick, or that, you know, you can't really see them all that much. So, you know, it could be just a very tinfoily hat theory, but, you know, you never know. And there's also the thing of, like, would the Lord of Light, like, really use a shadow out of everything? I mean, I guess there is a thing of, like, only light can produce a shadow, right? So I guess there's that whole thing. But it's, yeah, I guess it's an interesting talking point. I mean, that's the thing with, like, these sort of gods and then prophecies and things like that in Game of Thrones, is that they aren't to be taken literal. You know, because these prophets that actually do see these visions and whatnot don't get clear answers. So, you know, by extension, neither do we. But yeah, onto Azor Ahai, because this is obviously the big thing that is actually expected to happen in Season 8. And again, like, since you're not supposed to take, like, these things almost literally, I'm almost tempted to say back with cat's paw again that cat's paw will be the weapon used to kill the Night King and end the Great War. I'm almost tempted to believe that, because I think that, you know, even though Game of Thrones do this whole subvert expectation that you're not supposed to, you know, it's like it's supposed to be a bit more realistic, I think there's something really full circle about, you know, cat's paw, the dagger that started it all and the one that ends it all. You know, I think there's something like really sort of poetic about that. Now, if that does actually happen, then fucking great, awesome, I got it. But you know, if it doesn't, then I won't be surprised if it isn't. But you know, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that cat's paw is the one that does it. You know, paired with the whole Littlefinger thing, like, you know, if you remember, Jaqen used to say, one of the first things he said when he was mentioning a god, that he actually did mention the Red God. So, you know, if the Faceless Men and whatnot say that this god, you know, the god of maybe, I mean, he refers to it as the god of death later on, if that is actually the case, if it rules death, it obviously has that ability to resurrect people then. If it has the, you know, if it has that domain over death, then it obviously it's able to do that. But if Littlefinger does have ties to these Faceless Men, and he knows of the Red God and stuff like that, that maybe, you know, a guy of Dragonglass who was in Ashai, remember what the handmaiden said, where I believe the Red like the Lord of Light and all that kind of stuff originated, that, you know, that if Littlefinger was aware that giving the dagger, giving Cat's Paw to Bran, you know, was a sign of something that had to happen in order for the end of the Great War, then that would be nuts. But I mean, I'm almost tempted to believe that. I hope, like, you know, Littlefinger not knowing that, because I don't think Littlefinger has all of this. He doesn't really seem all that connected to the fantastical stuff of this story. He's more in line with the realistic political shit, right? So, you know, there is certain things that could be connected to him in that regard, but, you know, it's just little theories here. But of course, I kind of have to decide and name a person who I think Azor Ahai would be. Now, you know, this kind of leads back to Rhaegar. Rhaegar had a thing for prophecy. There are connections to, like, a prophetic woods witch. It said that the prince who was promised was supposed to come from the Mad King's line, so Aerys's line. Rhaegar thought for a long time that it was him, but then later on was actually discussed with the woods witch that maybe, I guess, it's supposed to come, you know, it's, you know, continuing on from Aerys's line through Rhaegar, and thus it's easier to say that Jon would end up being it, considering the fact that, you know, he is almost like the hero of the story in a way. He has relationships to the two of the biggest houses, mainstay houses, Targaryen and Stark, and obviously he's the one that stared down the Night King and everything like that. You know, he's the one that's had the biggest connection to the Army of the Dead and everything like that, so it would make the most sense for Jon to be Azor Ahai. I mean, if I remember correctly, I don't think it was given a reason as to why Rhaegar suddenly changed his mind, thinking that it wasn't him that was going to be Azor Ahai, but it was actually going to be one of his offspring. And there are theories that, you know, when he met with the Woods Witch again, now known as the ghost of something, I can't remember what it is, that, but she has connections, and almost like there's like a thing in the books where like they could be the same person, and there's theories on that. But, you know, there are connections to her and Rhaegar again, that she may have said something along the lines that Azor Ahai has to be of Targaryen and Stark. There has to be a mixture, so that would make sense as to why he annulled the marriage with Elia and decided to go with Lyanna. And maybe it's not entirely out of love, you know, maybe, like, obviously maybe they did have a thing, but if Rhaegar's initial idea was to see through this prophecy, as he does see a lot of importance in it, then it would make sense as to why he changed wives with Lyanna Stark, you know. So yeah, there's that. But yeah, back in the house with the House of the Undying, you know, I believe this wasn't this wasn't actually shown in the show, but in the books there is another vision that Dany sees, and that is her brother talking with a woman that she doesn't know. Now, it's not exactly said who the woman is, but it's believed to be Lyanna Stark. And Lyanna asks Rhaegar to write a song, and Rhaegar says that he already has one, a song of ice and fire. You know, so obviously that does correlate to Jon being Azor Ahai. You know, he's got the fire of the dragon and, you know, the ice of the Starks. But Rhaegar actually locks eyes with Daenerys, and it's hard to say whether it's almost he's actually looking at Daenerys or looking at Lyanna through, like, Daenerys, because obviously she's not supposed to be there, and says there must be one more. Now, Aegon the Fifth, which I can't remember, I think it might be his, like, great, I don't know, grandfather or something like that. Anyway, Aegon the Fifth had this whole prophecy that, you know, not only like Azor Ahai and all of that stuff, but also that dragons would return, and that if it was to happen, all of this would happen at the same time. Now, with Rhaegar locking eyes with Daenerys, or whatever, looking through her and saying that there must be one more, that the dragon has 3 heads. Rhaegar says that exact quote, the dragon has 3 heads. So if to complete this prophecy, there must be Azor Ahai with the blood of Targaryen and Stark, but also a dragon with 3 heads in order to complete the whole thing, then that would make sense. It would make sense that Jon is Azor Ahai, but in order to do so, he needs the dragon's help. There's also this whole thing with, like, you know, essentially, you know, not taking you know, the literal meaning of what Azor Ahai is, that, you know, he will wield a flaming sword and what, like, and things like that, that maybe the flaming sword is a dragon, you know, like, you know, if you're looking into what words mean and stuff like that, it doesn't have to take a literal meaning of it's a flaming sword, but, you know, it's a flaming weapon, a dragon, you know. So there are things, I mean, there's obviously the thing of, like, is Jon going to ride Rhaegal? You know, that would, I mean, I fucking want it. I want that to happen so badly, but we'll have to wait and see. So yeah, the last note on this kind of this theory and prediction, the prophecy has also said that the sword in question, the flaming sword, in order for it to set ablaze, that, you know, a sacrifice must be given of, like, you know, the Azor Ahai's significant other, which, you know, I mean, if Jon was to be Azor Ahai, in order to save the world, he may have to kill Daenerys, and that could be Daenerys' end, you know. So there is that. I mean, at this point, it could be anybody, because to subvert expectation, I mean, it, you know, with everything in sight, I don't like the idea of, like, you know, like, it is odd to think that through this entire thing, why Jon wouldn't be the one to be Azor Ahai in this at this point in time, you know, and, like, it just ended up being someone else. Like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, if it was Jaime, and then in order to get, like, the flaming sword, he has to kill Cersei, that would be a fucking good one. I wouldn't mind that. It's just odd, like, thinking that because the story has set up it's fucking Jon, he's the one to basically lead everyone against the army of the dead, that it would just make sense story-wise, at least in every other story ever, that it would clearly be Jon to do it. But in a show that subverts expectation and you know, and gives you that sort of element of, like, fuck, I didn't see that coming, it could be anybody else. And like I said, if Cat's Paw is the one to end it, then it doesn't necessarily mean, like, would I ever see Jon wielding Cat's Paw, like a dagger? No, I just don't see. That's just not Jon's weapon, is it? So I don't know. It's all up in the air, and Game of Thrones has set this sort of bar for, like, you know, shock value and things coming out of the blue that you wouldn't expect. So yeah, you know, we don't know. We're just gonna have to wait and see. But yeah, that is all I have. So, whew, finally, I eventually got through the whole thing. This has been a very, very long video. I know it's going to be, like, over. It could end up being like 3 hours long, so I apologize. You know, but like I said, the links to everything there is. Wait, at this point, it doesn't really matter because we're at the end of the video. But yeah, I've got everything out of the way. Everything's in one place of what my whole feelings on Game of Thrones and things that I expect to happen in season 8. And you know, I've had a good time, to be honest. Like, even though it's been a hell of a lot of work doing this, I've had a pretty good time. Like, it's something different that I've done, and I'm happy with the way that I think it's turned out. So yeah, let me know exactly what you think about my theories and everything like that in the comments below. Let me know if you actually like this video, regardless of, you know, of how fucking long it is. Like, I could have split it up, but I felt like, you know, I had to. You know, I was just, I don't know, I just wanted everything to be in one place in this video and just have it all there. You know, so yeah, so that is all. So thank you everybody for watching, and I hope to see you with my reactions for the upcoming season. You know, again, like, just to let you guys know, it's only going to be 10 minutes of footage. That's literally all it's going to be. I can't go anything over that. If you want to see full lengthing and like to the show or anything like that, then you're going to have to become a full-length Patreon over on my Patreon. Link will be in the description for that as well. But yeah, so I hope to see you guys there. But that is all. So thank you everyone for watching. I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.